This is not good. I snap at the black scythe hunting ants to move faster and hurry their reaping. They quicken, but the moment their scythes fall on a wolf wrapped in that bloody glow, they are strangely thrown aside, unable to bite in at all, immune to attacks. My brow tightens as I stare, hunting for the trick, and the next second I have my answer. The wolves that were clinging to the barest thread of life climb slowly to their feet on the strength of that red light, eyes flooding with fresh bloodlust. Their whole bodies give off a power that feels even greater than when they first appeared. Baekhyun protests that it is downright cheap, that we finally take one life and it simply grows a second. My own expression is far from good. I paid a heavy price to wipe out this 1,001 stroke. 300 diamond rank plasma ants spent themselves to the last on their burst skill, good for nothing now in the fight to come. After a cost that's steep, better than half the pack has clawed its way back to full. My reflexes are quick, and I had the ants racing to finish the fallen early, but the dragon-head giant wolf is no slower, and a single howl fired its ability off with instant effect. Even so, roughly 650 wolves surge back to life. Once they stand, the red glow shielding them scatters fast, and without a moment's pause, they hurl themselves at the black scythe hunting ants up front. This time they come seething with rage, none of their earlier carelessness left, and their savage lunge tears heavy losses into the front-rank black scythe hunting ants at once. The battle boils over into a white heat. Baekhyun eyes the fierce fighting ahead and rubs his fists, itching to throw himself in, asking what we are meant to do. I shake my head and keep my eyes on the dragon-head giant wolf, telling him this is not our battlefield. That over there is. The reason we crushed the 1,000 wolves a moment ago was surprise above all. But the enemy is braced now, and this next phase will be a grinding blow-for-blow slog that drains stamina and energy without end. If we pour ourselves into these worthless small fry, it is precisely what the dragon-head giant wolf wants. The beast seems to catch the fighting weight in my stare. With a look of disdain, it pads 2 unhurried steps forward, and then holds still in no hurry at all to attack. Clearly, it cares nothing for its wolves throwing their lives away. It means to let them wear my team's stamina down, and then step in to reap the reward. Baekhyun looks thoroughly annoyed and mutters that this discount wolf is a pure beast, so how can it be so cunning? I answer, helpless, that it is only natural for a legendary rank creature to carry some intelligence. I tell him to put it out of his mind that we have no choice but to grind through this hard fight, and that I am leaving it to my ants. With that, I turn to Swift Shadow, directing the assault from a corner of the field, and hand the whole engagement to her. I am taking 50 clear ants and 180 blasting ants with me, I tell her, and leaving her 20 blasting ants, and I ask whether that will serve. She agrees at once and answers that the task is as good as done, then goes on silently steering the ant army's attack from the shadows. Just as the black scythe hunting ants at the very front begin to buckle, golden beams of light come streaking in from the rear. The lightly wounded black scythe hunting ants mend back to whole in a breath. Even the badly hurt ones knit together fast under the golden light, reclaiming much of their fighting power and folding back into the line within moments. Those beams are the work of the 300 light healing ants at the back, whose healing on an open field amounts to a great roving blood bank. Under it, the black scythe hunting ants stand like an unbreakable wall. The wolves are no fools. Watching the black scythe hunting ants, they had all but shredded spring whole again under the golden light. They grasp at once what is happening. They know the rule that you deal with the healer first. Soon a small pack peels off to hunt the light healing ants down. But under Swift Shadow's command, the healers slip about like greased loaches, and the wolves cannot land so much as a scratch. They are forced back into a bloody grind against black scythe hunting ants who never stop being mended. I take a quick read of the field, and seeing Swift Shadow direct it all with such ease, I nod satisfied. We are not needed here, I tell Baekhyun and 09 with quiet confidence, so let us go to our own battlefield. Baekhyun laughs that he has been waiting for me to say exactly that, and urges the magic carpet swiftly forward. We break away from the clash of ants and wolves, and pull up about 1,000 meters in front of the dragon-head giant wolf. That distance means almost nothing to a legendary rank creature like it. 09, who has kept still and saved her strength for so long, drives her galaxy up beside the carpet. I rise from the carpet and float slowly forward until I hover before 09 in her galaxy, and Baekhyun on his carpet, the three of us forming a triangle aimed squarely at the beast. The clash to come will decide the winner outright. The three of us settle into our battle stances, an aura of strength pouring off us. Even the dragon-head giant wolf, a legendary rank creature with dragon blood in its veins, does not dare take us lightly, and grows a shade more serious. Our aura is nothing like its own, which can shape real effects and crush an enemy's attributes. Ours is a thing forged instead from crossing countless hardships, felling countless foes, and stacking victory upon victory along the road. If we keep winning, one day it too will harden into a power that presses down on our enemies for real. I keep my eyes fixed on the beast and say low that it still has not moved. That means either it is cautious and prizes its own life, or the wound that Chief dealt it is biting far harder than it lets on. I tell them to fight, and to fight with everything we have. Baekhyun bursts out laughing and says it has been far too long since he felt this alive, and to fight to our heart's content. Behind him, a massive golden magic array unfurls, laying bare the king's treasury blazing within, his signature ability. 09 moves quicker still. Without a word, she drives the galaxy straight at the dragonhead giant wolf, 4 jets of tail flame roaring out behind her for thrust. She goes from a standstill to full speed and eats the 1,000-meter gap in a blink, so fast that only an afterimage trails her. The next second, the galaxy stands 10 meters from the beast, its giant alloy greatsword already sweeping down in a heavy overhead cut. So fast, Baekhyun cannot help exclaiming. For a behemoth dozens of meters tall like the galaxy, 10 meters is as good as nose to nose. The wolf's body runs past 10 meters long and looks fearsome enough on its own. But set against the galaxy it is, by size alone, an adult beside an infant, stripped of all its menace. Propelled by its tail flames, the galaxy spins a full 360 degrees on the spot, layering yet more speed onto the blow out of nowhere. The greatsword whirls into the beast's neck like a tornado. It all happens in a flash. The greatsword rings against the neck, sheathed in thick silvery white dragon scales, and Baekhyun cries out in delight, praising 09 for the clean hit. But the words are barely gone before the real picture reaches him, and his face changes utterly. Where the alloy greatsword struck, the neck only threw off sparks, leaving nothing but a thin, faint scratch across the scales. Not a drop of blood, not even a deeper dent. What is going on? Baekhyun stammers, asking how a blow that heavy failed to break its guard at all, half doubting his own eyes. 09's strike may not have used her every technique, but it surely carried 6 or 8 tenths of her power, and even so it only grazed the beast, dealing no real wound. More absurd still, the dragonhead giant wolf did not react in the slightest, standing there calm as stone and taking the blow head on. Baekhyun admits honestly that if that strike had landed on him, he would be a heap of mush by now. A shadow of despair crosses his face as he wonders aloud whether the gulf between legendary rank and diamond rank is really that vast. I am no less surprised by the beast's strength. 09's blow was undeniably fierce, and no one could promise to eat it without a scratch. Yet the dragonhead giant wolf did exactly that, and did it with ease. Something is not right, I mutter, shaking my head. Strong as a legendary rank creature may be, it is still flesh and blood, so how can it put on a showing this outrageous? Baekhyun asks whether 09 truly failed to hurt it at all. There are a few possibilities, I tell him. First, by that same old saying, copperhead, iron bones, and a waist soft as tofu, the head is exactly where this beast is hardest. Topped with a dragon skull, stronger defense there is only to be expected. Beyond that, we still have a whole spread of weakening items we have not yet turned on it, and an unweakened legendary rank creature is simply not something we can crack open with ease. Once we have exhausted every method we carry, then whatever our real odds, at the very least we will not be left unable even to scratch it. From inside the Mecha 09 answers that I have it right, that she was only testing its defense. When she brought the greatsword down on its neck, she says she felt a force shove the blade aside. Under that shove, the power of the strike collapsed to less than a tenth of what it should have been. The effect was either some inborn deflecting property of its dragon scales, she reasons, or a skill it loosed in secret to cow us. Our words and steadiness chase the gloom off Baekhyun's face, and it gives way to a grin. He grasps it now and understands why it was faking such strength. As long as the thing has a health bar, he declares, we can grind this discount wolf down to death little by little. What truly scared him, he admits, was the thought that we could not break its guard and could not even make its health bar surface, and that would have been the real despair. With that, the magic array behind Baekhyun on his carpet flares brilliantly, and dozens upon hundreds of beams, each carrying a different effect, streak straight at the dragonhead giant wolf. They are the weakening beams drawn from the many debuff items inside his king's treasury, slows and enfeeblements and stuns and armor breaks, a comprehensive weakening from head to tail, inside and out. After the reminder 09 and I just gave him, Baekhyun knows the right way to deal with this beast, to crack its defense and wear it down first, then join hands to finish it. That is why he loosed such a flood of beams at once. The dragonhead giant wolf lives up to the name of a legendary rank creature, its combat instincts honed rich and deep. The instant it catches the hundreds of beams bearing down, it sensed the danger. Where it stood and 809's imposing greatsword without a flinch, it can no longer keep its elegant haughty pose and scrambles aside in a graceless roll. Having dodged, it feels it has lost face and rage takes it in a heartbeat. It loses a furious howl, then leaps, hurling itself savagely straight at Baekhyun. That evasion of the beast was a clumsy thing, but I do not let my guard slip a hair. My frown only deepens because the dragon-head giant wolf feels more troublesome by the moment. By rights, a legendary rank powerhouse with dragon blood should be steeped in arrogance, yet to dodge a weakening that would hardly have dented it, this one stooped to roll along the ground. An enemy who will use any means at all in a fight is the most fearsome kind there is. It gives us no room to answer, already lunging at savage speed, its gaping maw 2 or 3 meters wide enough to swallow Baekhyun whole. Baekhyun pinches his nose and pulls a face of pure disgust, declaring the discount wolf has foul breath and that he refuses. But there is no real panic in him, and golden light shivers at his back as his body begins to fade away. His reflexes are quick, yet someone else moves quicker still. A thunderclap sounds, and the next second, 09 and her galaxy plant themselves between Baekhyun and the beast. The alloy greatsword crackles with arcs of electricity as she rams it sideways into the wolf's open mouth and jams the bite. She tells Baekhyun she will hold it and to find his chance to weaken it, the mechanical voice carrying flat from the cockpit. So cool, Baekhyun breathes, stunned for a beat before nodding hard and telling her to leave it to him. He halts his fading, drops back onto the magic carpet, and flashes away to open distance. Then a golden circle spreads behind him and he starts pouring out weakening skills again. The skills come in every kind, some from items and some from equipment. Many of the items are single use and vanish the moment they fire, but so long as they sit inside his king's treasury, he can spend them again and again. His own ability caps him, and a few of the highest grade items still will not repeat, but even so it is a monstrous cheat. Pinned by 09 and with nowhere to flee from the barrage, the dragon-head giant wolf throws up a sudden wall of ice before it and blocks the beams. Then it clamps down on the galaxy's greatsword and flings the whole mecha aside by main force. The galaxy stands past 80 meters tall, and it is hauled sideways by a beast a mere dozen meters long. The galaxy was gripping that greatsword and bracing with everything it had, not only its full mechanical strength but its terrible weight of thousands of tons. And even so, the beast slung it away. The brute force of the thing beggars belief. Terrible brute strength, elemental powers, terrible defense, speed bloodline suppression, the raising of its own dead underlings. This is only what the dragon-head giant wolf has shown us so far, and each of it is already fearsome. And the battle has barely started. The beast surely hides more tricks yet, and this is nowhere near its full strength. Flung off to the side, 09 frowns and studies the greatsword, now bearing a clear tooth mark bitten into its edge. The alloy greatsword, she says, was forged from the essences of assorted platinum rank and diamond rank materials, its hardness reaching a Mohs level of 39, near 4 times that of diamond. Even so, the beast bit it and warped it with ease. She marvels at the terrible hardness and the superb material, and she adds that if all its bones could be drawn out, they would make excellent stock for a legendary rank mecha. For all her shock at the beast's power, 09 hungers more for the materials on its body. At this stage, what fetters her strength is not her craft but her supply. And given enough high-grade material, she could build higher-tier mechas outright, a prospect too tempting for a machinery-obsessed girl to resist. So her gaze on the dragon-head giant wolf turns fervent, and that fervor bleeds through the cockpit and is caught, keenly, by the beast itself. It snarls inwardly that this human actually dares to covet its very flesh and bone. It rages that this is the ultimate blasphemy, and that blood must repay blood. As a legendary rank powerhouse of high bloodline, it has always been the apex hunter, feeding on all things under heaven, never once cast as prey. Least of all should it ever be prey to humans, those weak and brittle creatures it holds in utter contempt. The dragon-head giant wolf drops headlong into a furious rage, throws its head back once more, and roars. Hearing the commotion, I feel the bad omen at once from my distance, because each of the beast's howls marks the release of some ability. I wonder what fearsome one it means to loose this time. I am not left guessing long. Even as it keeps roaring, the dragon-head giant wolf's body begins to swell fast, 18 meters, 20, 25, until in the space of a blink it has doubled. It still falls short of 09's galaxy, but the sight is staggering all the same. A dozen meters long, it was already near impossible to budge, and now it runs past 30. I do not believe for a second it staged all this for the sake of looking bigger. Baekhyun, behind me, wears a helpless look and grumbles that the thing must be sick, that it is not playing by any rules. It has not shed a single hair yet has already burned through several ultimate moves. He complains and asks whether it could not at least wait to transform when its health runs low. I tell him to be serious, that this is not one of his games. Low health transformations and all. I shake my head and turn back to the beast with a grave face, then draw a great longbow from my storage ring, the dragonbone warbow I came by long ago. Gold rank though it is, the bow is a growth-type piece with formidable effects, and its one drawback is that raising it demands the slaying of creatures with dragon blood. In all this time, I never crossed paths with a dragon, and with my ants steadily growing stronger, there were rarely fights that called for me to act. So the fine dragonbone warbow ended up gathering dust at the bottom of my box. Now at last, a battle demands that I step in myself, and against a creature of dragon blood no less, which makes this bow the perfect fit. A gold rank piece in a legendary rank fight may feel like taking a kitchen knife to a divine beast, but equipment is in the end only a tool, and how strong an effect it draws still rests on the hand that wields it. And I am the one who can keep gold rank equipment biting even in a legendary rank battle. I murmur a greeting to the old bow and an apology for having let it sleep so long, and I stroke the bow's stave gently. It answers with a soft ring, as though it hears me. I waste no more time. The bow in my left hand, I draw the string with my right and pull it easily to a full moon. I sight it on the dragon head giant wolf and let a faintly transparent dragon chi arrow condense at the nock. At the same time, my whole body draws in a swelling, powerful force. It is so heavy it hardly seems to belong to a diamond rank existence, faint enough even to stand against the transformed dragon head giant wolf. Yet powerful as my aura is, it stays sealed within a single meter around me, never spilling out loud and lordly the way the beast's does in the distance, so no one present marks it. I do not rush the shot. Instead, I use the beast's stillness to keep compressing and packing power into the dragon chi arrow. As I pour myself into it, the almost transparent arrow hardens, slowly taking on the shape of a solid physical bolt. Just as I quietly ready my finishing blow, Baekhyun, hanging in the air not far ahead of me, has already gathered a thick golden laser at the mouth of the light array behind him. He cannot let the discount wolf transform in such comfort, he mutters, reasoning that mid-change it likely has little to spare for defense, and promises to hit it with something fierce. The golden laser thickens and blows until it looks fit to burst. Once it is crushed to its limit at the array's mouth, it erupts the next instant, hurtling at the beast where it stands motionless. The golden laser tears at the dragonhead giant wolf faster than the eye can follow. To Baekhyun's delight, it punches clean through the wall of ice raised before the beast, and slams into its body. He crows that now the thing knows how formidable he is, and how dare it try to transform right in front of him and nearly get away with it. Then he plants his hands proudly on his hips. Plain as the attack looked, it is his main means of offense, and he can dial its force up or down by feeding it more or less energy. That last shot alone spent a full 30% of his reserves, because he wanted to catch the beast mid-change and hit it hard. As the smoke and dust thin, the dragonhead giant wolf comes back into view, and where the golden laser struck there is a bowl-sized crater weeping bright red blood. But Baekhyun shows not a shred of joy, his brow nodding instead. He mutters that a blow spending 30% of his strength opened only a wound this small, and asks just how thick the discount wolf's health bar can be. Even before the beast transformed, such a wound would not have counted as serious. Now, with its bulk doubled, the gash looks more trifling still, no worse than a mosquito bite on a human frame, painless and beneath notice. Within a dozen seconds, the wound is already clotting and scabbing over, on its way to closing entirely, but for the faint stains on the silver-white fur, one would never guess it had been hurt. Seeing 30% of his power by so slight an injury, Baekhyun's spirit all but caves. Is this really a legendary rank creature, he wonders, and reckons he can throw a blow at that level only 3 times over. Had he faced this discount wolf alone, he would not have lasted more than a handful of exchanges. The sheer gap rattles his composure, and his body sways a little where it sits on the magic carpet. Baekhyun has been a proud thing all his life. Challenging those above his rank was ordinary fare along his road. Silver rank felling gold, gold felling platinum, platinum felling diamond. By that logic, surely diamond felling legendary should be a matter of course, the next natural step. By his own experience, it ought to be so. In truth, had I not invited him this time, and were there no legendary rank creatures already at his side, he would have wanted to solo one himself. He came along at my call, only to lend me a hand. His mindset had always been loose and easy, never taking legendary rank monsters seriously at all. But after that unguarded strike, the result struck him hard, and the cruel truth lay bare before him, that against a legendary rank creature, he is still far from strong enough. Baekhyun smiles bitterly and shakes his head. He tells himself how absurd it is that everything is run so smoothly he has let go of even his most basic caution. He warns himself that at this rate he is due for a bad fall. But fortunately, he adds, he does not fight alone. He has me and 09 at his side, powerful teammates he can trust. Even if his own strength falls short, so what? He can still pour out every ounce of it he has, and so long as we stand united, what is a single legendary rank creature to us? Bit by bit, the confident smile returns to his face, no longer bowed by the outcome of his full strength blow. The golden magic array behind him opens once more, and the next second hundreds of weakening beams streak at the dragon head giant wolf's wound at blistering speed. This time they fire faster, and their effect and force run far greater, because Baekhyun is using the king's treasury's own power to amplify the beams he looses. That single amplification, though, drinks a full 50% of his strength, and his face drains pale on the spot as so much energy empties out of him. He does not mind in the least, and a faint smile tugs at the corner of his mouth. Since he cannot do the beast much harm, he means to weaken it with all he has, he says, and leave the killing to his dear teammates. The dragon head giant wolf has only just finished transforming, and has had no moment to settle when Baekhyun seizes the opening and fires hundreds of varied weakening beams into its wound at once. The effects bite home in an instant, slow and armor break, and lowered elemental resistance and softening and stun, all of it piling onto the newly transformed beast and leaving it thoroughly uncomfortable. But only somewhat. With a cold snort that dismisses my ants as so much vermin, the dragon-head giant wolf charges hard toward Baekhyun, bent on dealing with this fly first, and Baekhyun, wrung out and limp, lies sprawled across the magic carpet without even the strength left to slip away through his fading trick. He only smiles up at the sky. Just as Baekhyun is about to perish beneath the wolf's claws, in the last possible breath, a black energy ball comes tearing at the dragon-head giant wolf. It is extremely fast, crackling, giving off terrible fluctuations. And in the same moment, a swifter golden arrow, wrapped in an aura more terrible still, streaks in from another angle, a pitch-black pill nested at its very tip. Baekhyun lies on his back watching the two fearsome blows flash past above him, and a relaxed smile spreads across his face. Just in time. My golden arrow and 09's black energy orbs slam into the dragon-head giant wolf in the same instant. At first, the beast barely reacts, since it had just fired off an enhancement skill and nearly doubled its own physical strength. Then both attacks detonate against its hide with two thunderous blasts, and the 30-meter monster is hurled clean backward by the force. Where the black orb struck, its back caves into a basin-sized crater that gushes fresh blood. The orb does not vanish after landing either. It clings to the wound and keeps boring deeper with a vicious spin, hissing like meat thrown on a grill. My arrow punches through its chest and bursts out the far side of its back, churning everything inside it to ruin. Even a beast with that much vitality cannot shrug off two wounds like these. It lets out a low growl of pain, a thread of crimson leaking from the corner of its mouth. Baekhyun, who had barely torn free of its claws, throws us a startled thumbs up before he puts distance between himself and the wolf on his flying carpet. He tells me that strike of mine was absurdly fierce. The bargain bin wolf has skin and flesh thick as armor, he complains, and after pouring 30% of his own energy into it, he only managed to scratch. Yet I skewered the thing clean through on a single arrow. I take a slow breath and shake my head with a smile, and I ask him whether he really thinks that shot came easy. This dragon-head giant wolf has a defense that is nothing short of astonishing, so he needs to stay careful. Between us, my attack and 09's are not going to put it down for good. Baekhyun nods, serious now, and swears he understands and will not get cocky. That last claw nearly shipped him off to another world, he says, and he has not had his fill of this one, so he is done gambling with his own life. I like the man better when he is scared. 09 folds the alloy cannon back down against Galaxy's spine, the same cannon she just used to launch that orb. The weapon runs on her compressed energy technology, and to hold that much power, its barrel had to be forged from the rarest materials she could gather. That scarcity was a large part of why Galaxy took her so long to finish, and it only came together at all because I poured in a fortune of resources to help. Firing it is no small thing. A single shot demands a full 500 platinum rank beast cores and 10 diamond rank beast cores, all of their energy absorbed, compressed, and flung out through the barrel. On top of that, the cannon's spiral firing method twists an internal rotation into the orb before it leaves. No wonder one strike could carve a wound like that into a legendary rank beast. If she could chain a dozen of them in a row, killing the dragon-head giant wolf outright would not even be difficult. But a blast that heavy leaves even 09 with only enough energy for one, and the barrel is the other problem. The material can barely tolerate the heat, so after that single shot it is already warped out of shape, and it will have to go back for repairs before it can fire again. For the fight still ahead, the cannon is dead weight. 09 flies Galaxy over beside us and tells us plainly that the weapon is spent. The heat we had all been building instantly cools. Baekhyun frowns and laughs at himself, saying he had taken that shot for one of her ordinary moves, and it turns out to be an ultimate skill instead. I rub my aching arm and ask him what he was thinking, since nothing that violent could possibly be a regular attack. Still, I tell them I have other cards to play, and as long as we can crack its defense, we will be fine. I am about to say more when a howl of pain and fury cuts me off. The next thing I see is the dragon-head giant wolf dragging the surrounding purple mist into its own body at a furious rate. It can actually swallow the instance mist. I have no idea what it is doing, but a bad feeling settles over me at once. Fighting through the soreness in my arm, I raise my Dragonbone warbow and loose 3 quick shots. No charge behind them, just raw speed, and all 3 strike the wolf mid-transformation. To my surprise, the 3 dragon energy arrows do no damage at all. They sink into its body and simply vanish, as if it drank them down, and as they disappear I catch a stretch of its wound knitting itself shut. My eyes narrow. Something is very wrong here. Beside me, Baekhyun and 09 are already moving to launch their own attacks. I throw up a hand and tell them to stop, that they cannot hit it right now. It has triggered some ability that pulls in every scrap of energy around it to repair its body, so striking it now would only feed the recovery and speed it up. Baekhyun freezes, brows knotted, and grumbles that this is grossly unfair, asking whether we are really meant to stand here and watch it heal. I shake my head. Being unable to attack does not mean we cannot pin it down other ways, and pinning things down is exactly what he is good at. His eyes light up and he claps his hands, admitting he had gotten muddled, and promising to give the beast something to chew on. He calls up his king's treasury again and starts flinging ability after ability at the dragon head giant wolf, laying a full ring of them all the way around it. The instant it so much as twitches, 100 traps will spring and clamp restrictions onto it from every side. I nod my approval and tell him to hold just a little longer. The wolf has burned through a great many of its abilities already, and even a legendary ranked beast has only so many, so this repair is almost certainly one of its last few. I tell them to ride out this one wave, and then it is ours. Baekhyun and 09 nod, and I watch a little hope kindle in both of them. By then the dragon head giant wolf has stopped drinking the purple mist. Every wound on its body is closed, even the one the chief in black robe carved into it, until its whole frame looks flawless. Purple mist wheels and rises around it in a slow spiral. It sweeps a cold gaze across us, lets a mocking curl touch its mouth, and then a storm erupts out of its body. In the next breath it howls and simply vanishes from where it stood, roaring toward the 3 of us like a hurricane given teeth. Only a handful of Baekhyun's traps manage to trigger. The rest are torn loose and flung aside by the gale wrapped around the beast. I barely get out a warning that it is on us. The warning is all I manage before the hurricane hits, and the wind screams so hard I cannot keep my eyes open. Grit rides the gale and rakes across the 3 of us, and every scrape of it stings. The wolf's speed after that recovery blows past anything I had braced for. I had assumed the ability it used was only meant to mend its body. Instead, all that swallowed purple mist has multiplied its speed several times over. The web of traps I had pinned my hopes on, the ones Baekhyun laid, is almost entirely shredded before it can slow the beast at all. I shout for everyone to defend and throw up the lightning shield I learned from the plasma ant, a circular barrier barely a square meter wide unfurling in front of me. The impact arrives an instant later. The shield does not last even half a second before the sheer force shatters it, and then the blow lands on me. My insides lurch. I cough up a mouthful of blood and go flying backward like a kite with its string cut. My whole body rings, and my organs feel like they have been shoved out of place. If not for the dragon scale cloak taking part of the hit, I think that last blow would have killed me outright. Coughing blood as I tumble through the air, I hold on to the last thread of consciousness and pull a bamboo tube from my storage ring, then swallow the liquid inside. It is the elf dew I got from Shongha. The cool liquid slides down my ruined throat, and within seconds a deep soothing chill spreads through me as my shredded organs begin stitching themselves back together. By the time it settles, more than half my awareness has come back. My body is still weak, but at least half of the worst injuries have mended and I can move on my own again. The elf dew works better than I ever expected, and carrying it was the only reason I still have a life to worry about. Then the worry arrives. That hurricane charge did not only gut me, it tore through Baekhyun and 09 as well. If I am wearing legendary rank gear, the dragon scale cloak included, and I still ended up this badly hurt. I do not want to think about what it did to them. I scan the ground. The first thing I find is Galaxy, slumped half lying against a low hill, unable to move. The alloy across its front twisted and caved in. 09 sat in the cockpit and never took the impact head on, but a cockpit is no guarantee of safety, and the shock and violent shaking of a hit like that would still tear into her. Given her physical limits, she is almost certainly badly injured. Otherwise, Galaxy, damaged as it is, would not have gone completely still, and only her losing consciousness would leave the machine like this. I go cold, but I know the dragonhead giant wolf is still prowling somewhere close. Its exact state is a mystery, and the fact that it did not rush in to finish us means I cannot afford anything reckless. So instead of running straight for 09, I reach through the mutual aid contract and pull 10 light healing ants off the main battlefield. I send them to Galaxy to bathe her in light healing ray through the cockpit. Then I sweep the field again and finally spot Baekhyun farther off, face bloodless, sprawled on the ground with a green orb circling him and shedding a powder thick with the aura of life. He is recovering fast under it. Seeing that he is not about to die, I let out a breath. I turned to the dragon-head giant wolf on the far side. It stands about 1,500 meters off. The purple mist around it thinned but already streaming back in, and it looks ready to return to the state it was in when it launched that charge. It watches me with a proud, gloating triumph, its eyes cold and full of scorn. Even though it just struck down both Baekhyun and 09 in a single blow, it does not loosen its guard for a moment. It keeps massing its strength to make the killing stroke foolproof. I look at that contemptuous stare, the way it studies me like I am some insect, and my face goes cold by degrees. I glance again at my two teammates and their uncertain fates, and something hot flares behind my eyes. I ask it, without a sound, whether it is very proud of itself for gutting my people. Then I move. My body lifts and floats forward on no wind at all, and I rush straight at the dragon-head giant wolf. The beast, still gathering power, freezes at the sight, clearly questioning its own wolf sense. Does this human think the gap is too wide, victory hopeless, and mean to throw his life away on purpose? It decides that is not impossible, since weak little creatures like humans are exactly this spineless. It bears its dripping maw, stops hoarding power, and relaxes, because there is no sense wasting more on someone racing to die. That absorb and compress explosion is a strain even for it. An effort saved is effort earned. Aside from the fury in my eyes, I put up no resistance at all. I fly dead on toward its open jaws, and I really do look like a man in a hurry to kill himself. In another moment, I am nearly at its mouth, but the wolf is cunning and cautious to the last, so it closes its jaws a fraction and lifts a paw, meaning to swat the gift-wrapped human out of the air first. That is when everything changes. A clay pot and a single black pill appear out of nothing in my hand, and in the space between me and the dragon-head giant wolf, hundreds of fiery red spheres wink into being. An explosion loud enough to split eardrums roars up in the beast's disbelieving eyes. That black pill was the diamond-rank corrosion pill Sun Weepung developed, the one that drags a target's attributes down. I only had the single pill, so I had not wasted it on anything until now. From the start, I knew that challenging a legendary rank creature, and one this strong even among its own rank, was an uphill fight, and that our usual methods would get us nowhere. After testing a few burst damage tricks, I only understood the gap between us more clearly. As far as I could see, there was exactly one way to kill something whose strength so far outstripped ours. I had to make every legendary rank self-destruct ant I carried detonate at once. Only the self-destruct ant's blast, each one condensing its whole life force into a single burst, stacked with a spread of other abilities, could truly rattle an existence perched this high. The trouble was that the enemy was no stationary target. It was quick, wary, and clever. I had the self-destruct ants hidden away inside the spirit nurturing jar, but releasing them would have tipped the wolf off immediately. At its speed, they would likely never get the chance to explode before it was gone. To lock its attention in place, I had to take a gamble and use myself as the bait. Just as I hoped, the sight of me hurtling toward my own death made the beast drop most of its guard. By the time I loosed the corrosion pill and the last 200 and more diamond-rank self-destruct ants, the dragon-head giant wolf had no room left to dodge. Worse for it, the instant it thought to move, its mind went dizzy and fractured, as if something in its skull had short-circuited. The lapse lasted only a heartbeat, but by the time it came back to itself, all it could do was watch each red sphere swell and burst. The panel confirms the pill landed, all of the wolf's attributes dragged down by 19%. A chain of enormous blasts rolls out, one after another, and shakes the whole plaza. Blistering flames and black smoke swallow the dragon-head giant wolf and me together, until there is no seeing what is happening inside. Meanwhile, Baekhyun, mending under that miraculous green healing item, drifts back to consciousness. He had been out cold, and the huge explosion is what jolts him awake, leaving him to blink groggily toward the blazing center of the plaza. He wonders muzzily how he ended up asleep. And then it clicks, because only my self-destruct ants put out a blast like that. He has only just woken and is still half dazed, but as his memory floods back, he pieces together everything that happened while he was under. His eyes fly wide and he stares in alarm toward the heart of the explosion. Ignoring how weak his body still is, he forces himself upright, drops onto his flying carpet, and races toward the center. He cannot lose me here, and I can feel it in how hard he pushes. But the heat at the core is simply too much. He tries to break through several times, and each time the smoke and temperature shove him back out. He has barely recovered from the wolf's earlier charge, his body wrung out and his bones cracked and half out of joint. He calls up a few water element items, but it is like flinging a cup of water at a burning forest, and the wall of flame does not even notice. All he can do is circle the blaze, praying to catch a trace of my aura. Off in the distance, 09 lies half-collapsed at the edge of the plaza. Under the light-healing ants and the emergency injection her cockpit fired into her, she slowly comes around. The moment she wakes, she hauls Galaxy back onto its feet. Error reports scroll across the cockpit in a grim line. The defense system down 67%. The weapons at 39. The drive at 18. The radar at 71. She frowns at all of it. Baekhyun, who has given up trying to reach me, notices her state and rushes over on his carpet. He tells her I used the self-destruct dance and that I am somewhere in the center of the explosion with that dead wolf, and he begs her to search and find where I am. 09's pupils shrink, and her face, already pale from her wounds, drains further. She drives Galaxy toward the blaze and throws the radar into a hunt for any living signal. The system answers that at 71% damage it cannot lock onto targets, and it pleads with its pilot to get it repaired. Reading that, staring at the snow crawling across her screen, she bites down on her lip hard enough to draw blood, without noticing. Then Baekhyun catches something and stops her. I have a mutual aid contract binding me to my aunts, he reminds her. So if the aunts are still fine, then I must be fine too, and they should check the aunts first. The words finally land, and she snaps back to herself. Together they skirt the fire-drowned center and turn toward the other battlefield, where the ants had fought the wolf pack. With the smoke no longer in the way, they see the whole of it at once. The wolf monsters are all but wiped out, and the few not fully dead have lost any ability to fight. But my ants are in no better shape, strewn across the ground with heavy losses. If it were only a mutual slaughter between the ants and the wolves, that would be one thing. What unsettles them is that the support ants, the hover ants and light healing ants that never stood on the front line, are just as battered, sprawled, and unable to move. They are not dead, but they are finished as a fighting force. Baekhyun frowns and says these ants were kept safe in the rear and still won their fight. So why are they wrecked like this? And could it be that I really? He cannot make himself finish the thought. Once she takes in the state of the ants, 09 can no longer hold herself together. She forces the mech forward, straight at the raging flames. A warning blares that Galaxy's overall damage has reached 63% and demands repairs, then repeats itself over and over. The heat and smoke the self-destruct dance threw off are not only scorching but corrosive, and Galaxy, fine as its materials are, is already gutted. Most of its defense is gone. Wading into that furnace now is more than it can bear, and its damage climbs fast. Heat pours into the cockpit as the cooling system fails, and 09 is scalded until her whole body flushes red and sweat runs down her temples. She does not flinch. She only grips the steering controls tighter and steers Galaxy deeper toward the center. Baekhyun shouts her name and drags himself up on the last of his strength. He looses a water element shield around the cockpit to pull its temperature down, and then everything in him gives out. He has nothing left even to keep the flying carpet aloft, and he drops to the ground with it, his already broken body a little more broken. All he can manage is to lie there, eyes half shut watching the giant mech fade into the fire, and to cough out that she has to bring me back. Baekhyun had almost nothing left, so the water shield he threw up lasts only about 10 seconds before the terrible heat tears it apart. 09 is back into steam. High temperatures wring the water out of a body and throw its functions into chaos, and the heat leaves her dizzy and soaked through, as if someone had hauled her straight out of the bath. Even her custom skin-tight combat suit cannot shed it all. Her awareness starts to smear at the edges. Still she holds on, forcing Galaxy through the burning zone in search of me, my name a whisper on her lips. She has no idea how long she hunts in there. Maybe a minute, maybe half an hour, maybe a whole day, since with her mind this scattered she cannot feel time passing at all. She just keeps searching on willpower alone. At last, not far from the center, she makes out a familiar blurred shape lying dead still on the ground, and it is me. Beside me sprawls a dragon-head giant wolf blown into a bloody ruin, down to its final breath, the same beast that rode out the blast at the core with me. One look at its condition tells her exactly how monstrous the explosion had been. If not even a legendary rank wolf could survive it, then by any sane logic a man in my body should have been lucky to leave a whole corpse, let alone lie there merely unconscious. It makes no sense. But her consciousness is already coming apart and she has no room to chase the contradiction. Seeing me on the edge of blacking out herself, she rallies. She carefully lifts me and settles me into the cockpit. The moment it opens, a gust of that terrible heat and thick smoke pours in and nearly drops her. But from some reserve she did not know she had, she endures, seals the cockpit again, and sets me in the co-pilot's seat behind her. She spares the dying wolf, one last look, hesitates for less than half a second, then turns and makes for the way out. She had genuinely wanted to kill the dragon-head giant wolf on the spot. If it died, the instance would end and we could all leave in safety. But battered and senseless as it looked, or guttering, truly finishing it would still take an unknown amount of time and effort. In good condition, she could have done it easily. As she was, spent to her absolute limit and liable to faint at any second, with me beside her critically wounded and clinging to life by a thread, she could not take the gamble. If she tried and failed to put it down, the fallout would be unthinkable. So getting me clear of the trap came first. The wrecked Galaxy inches out of the explosion zone under her hands, one heavy step after another. Finally, she sees the open plaza through the smoke, and the instant she clears the burning edge, her consciousness goes out like a snuffed candle. With no one at the controls, Galaxy pitches to the ground. In truth, she had been on the verge of collapse far earlier, and the only thing that carried her this far was the fixed belief that she had to get me out. Now that they had left the fire, that wish was granted, and the potential she had forced out of herself simply drained away. Galaxy hits hard, but 09 had accounted for a crash long ago and built a passive pilot protection system into the machine, so she and I are spared any extra harm. Otherwise, a mech over 80 meters tall slamming down is no gentler than leaping off a building 20 or 30 stories high. 2 people already this hurt would likely have been finished by the fall alone. Dying by our own hand instead of the enemy's would have been a spectacularly stupid way to go. Outside the burning zone, Baekhyun sees Galaxy come crashing down and forces himself back to his feet, then flies to the cockpit on his carpet. From the moment 09 went into the heart of the explosion to the moment she came out, less than 10 minutes had actually passed. But across those minutes he had poured healing and recovery items into himself without a thought for the cost, and only just clawed back a little of his condition. He has no idea yet whether she managed to save me. A film of black smoke and dust coats the canopy and hides whatever is inside. Luckily 09 had triggered escape mode before she blacked out, so the canopy sits half open. Baekhyun wrenches it the rest of the way and finally sees the 2 of us. One of us is soaked through, skin steamed red, and that is me. We are slumped together, both utterly senseless, or possibly worse. His expression pulls tight and his heart pounds as he checks our breathing. When he feels a faint but steady thread of air from each of us, he sags with relief. He pulls out his floating green orb at once. Rather than jostle our bodies, he simply lets the healing powder fall over us, then keeps drawing item after item and using every one on us. He tells us we have to hold on, and he curses and pleads at the wretched heavens in the same breath. Just as he works over us, a familiar voice rings out. The Instance Core leader is dead, it announces. The battle won, and the Instance Core will close in 1 minute, with everything inside teleported to the outer space beyond. As the voice fades, a strangely purple treasure chest materializes in front of Baekhyun. The bargain bin wolf is actually dead. Baekhyun's eyes narrow, and he grasps at once that the dragon head giant wolf has fallen, and the instance has been cleared. Relief washes over him, and a flicker of joy surfaces on his face, because the fight is finally over, and now 09 and I will have all the time we need to rest. Part of what had him so frantic a moment ago was how drained the 2 of us were, and part was the wolf's uncertain fate, since no one had confirmed it dead. If it had reappeared while we both lay unconscious and his own strength sat below a tenth of its usual level, that would have been a dead end with no way out. Mercifully, none of that came to pass. He looks at my senseless face with open admiration and marvels at how I pulled it off, dropping a legendary rank wolf in a single blow and still walking away alive. He says to no one that it is nothing short of a miracle. With the Instance Core leader beaten, the whole instance will seal in 1 minute and sweep every being inside out to the world beyond. The problem is that 09 and I are in dreadful shape. If we are flung out at random and land near a pack of mutated beasts, that would be a disaster. Surviving a legendary rank creature only to die to something bronze or silver rank is a fate that simply cannot be allowed. So Baekhyun stops worrying about anything else. He tucks the purple chest into his storage ring first, then uses the flying carpet to gather up both of us. By then the minute is gone. The entire plaza warps in on itself, and a vast purple vortex opens in the sky and begins hauling up everything below it. Baekhyun barely has time to be startled at the speed, before he lashes the 2 of us tight to the carpet. In the next breath, we are dragged into the purple vortex and gone from that world. The dragon-head giant wolf, the wolf corpses, the ants, all of it is sucked up along with us and dumped into the outside. By now, though, the instance is already cleared, and my black island has begun to slowly swallow it whole. The ground out there is my territory now, so there is no fear of losing the spoils we bled for. 1 hour later, in the top floor office of Dungeon City's first tower, the 3 of us are gathered. None of us is in any state to boast about it. The dragon-head giant wolf hit all of us hard enough to crack bones throughout our bodies. Right now, those bodies are wound in white bandages, while 50 light healing ants pour light healing ray over us without pause. Rough as our condition is, an hour of that treatment has at least brought all 3 of us back to consciousness and given us our movement again. Baekhyun is half sprawled on the sofa, grimacing as he swallows one healing pill after another. He asks me how exactly I handled the bargain bin wolf, and how I of all people came out of that alive. On the other sofa, 09 sets down her own pill and turns a curious look on me. I take a sip of healing potion and answer with a thin smile that of course it came down to my self-destruct dance. The power of diamond rank self-destruct dance is already terrifying, and stacked with their assorted abilities, the damage only grows the more of them there are, and the closer they sit to the target. As long as the wolf was at the center of the blast, even a legendary rank beast cannot shrug off hundreds of diamond rank self-destruct ants. That is before counting the corrosion pill and all the weakening items Baekhyun threw in. Baekhyun nods, though the doubt has not fully left his face, and he asks how I endured that much explosive force at point-blank range. Then he fumbles, insisting he does not mean I had no right to survive, only that he is thrilled I did, and merely a little curious. I cannot help smiling and shaking my head, and I tell him I understand. Even the legendary rank dragon-head giant wolf could not weather that damage, yet I did, so of course he wants an answer. So I lay it out for them. When I first climbed to platinum rank, I unlocked an ability, and it is that ability that carried me through the blast of hundreds of diamond rank self-destruct ants. They both lean in, more curious than before. Rather than talk it out, I simply send them the ability's details. It is called damage transfer, and it shunts whatever damage I am about to take over the next 5 seconds onto all of my ants at once. I can use it only a single time each day. Baekhyun repeats it back in disbelief, that I can hand 5 seconds of my own damage to the ants, and then it dawns on him why I lived. It also explains the scene he saw earlier inside the instance core. My ants had clearly won their fight against the wolf pack, and yet all of them had collapsed grievously wounded. He had assumed something happened to me and that my summoned creatures suffered for it. In truth, they had taken the explosion in my place. I nod and tell him he has it right. The blast of hundreds of self-destruct ants was simply too vast, and only damage transfer let me stand it, leaning on the combined strength of every ant I own. A self-destruct ant's explosion is area damage, so if it went off inside a cluster of ants, no number of them could soak it. But this time I alone bore the damage, and the ants who shared it were not merely the 1,000-odd inside the instance core. There were the tens of thousands stationed outside it too, and with that many splitting the load among them, I somehow came through. Even so, the sheer scale of it outran what I had expected, and I am the mutual aid contract holder. A trace of leftover dread crosses my face. Even scattered across tens of thousands of ants, I still carried a sliver of that damage myself, and that sliver alone nearly took my life. Without a legendary rank defensive treasure, the dragon scale cloak, I could not say for certain I would have lived. The tens of thousands of ants who shouldered the rest took heavy wounds of their own and dropped out of the fight in an instant. It settles in me then, the first real understanding of just how fearsome my self-destruct ants are. As luck had it, that same terrible damage was exactly enough to end the dragon-head giant wolf and close the battle. And though I was gutted, I lived. Still, the fight left me with a warning. A desperate measure like that has to be used far more carefully, only when my own safety is already secured. When I finish laying it out, Baekhyun finally grasps how close a thing it had been, and he sighs. Power like that did not even kill the bargain bin wolf outright, he says, and it burned another 10 minutes in the sea of fire before it truly died. The vitality of a legendary rank creature is genuinely monstrous, and their strength runs far past what anyone expects. The next time we go after one, we will have to be more careful and more cautious still. Baekhyun's sigh strikes a chord in 09 in me, and we both nod along. Then I turn serious and look at the two of them with real apology, and I tell them this one is on me. I badly overestimated the strength of a legendary rank creature, walked us straight into a trap, and nearly got every one of us killed, and the fault is mine. 09 shakes her head gently and says it is not only mine. None of us truly knew what a legendary rank creature could do. If I had not brought them along to kill one and deepen our sense of them, then meeting one alone and careless down the line would have been the truly dangerous thing. Baekhyun waves both hands in agreement and asks how I can pin this on myself when I killed the bargain bin wolf and led them out alive. He says the greater the risk, the greater the reward. And this haul of ours is nothing to sneeze at. So once we have digested it, our strength climbs another full step. At that point, we might crack the gap wide between us and every other survivor and stand as something singular in the whole dark world. At the very least, he adds, we will not have to swallow that fraud God King's nonsense any longer. That last thought reminds him of something. He peels back the bandage on his right arm and tells me to hurry and strip off the mark the God King branded onto us. Earlier he had handed me the cleansing liquid meant to lift the God King's tracking mark, and we simply never found a moment to use it. Prompted now, I raise my storage ring, take the cleansing liquid out, and pour it over the upper part of his right arm. Then, copying him, I draw back the bandage on my own arm and pour a little across it. On both of our upper arms, over wounds that had looked empty a second before, an intricate golden circular mark surfaces. Under the liquid, the mark slowly lifts free of the skin, floats up, and dissolves into nothing. Watching it go, Baekhyun and I both breathe easier. I say we are finally rid of the clinging thing the God King stuck on us, and it is a relief to have it gone. Then I frown, because my right arm took severe burns and the skin was seared raw, and yet the God King's mark had clung on stubbornly through all of it without so much as flaking. The method behind it is genuinely unsettling. Baekhyun nods over and over and says the God King's tricks are vicious. If we ever get the chance, we have to put him down as early as we can, or he will grow into a real disaster. The God King is not merely a mental power user, he can also devour the spirit bodies of dead Alliance of Gods members through the divine mark. an evil method that lets him grow at a frightening pace. A figure like that, the kind who would sit overpowered through every stage of a game, is exactly the sort you clear off the board as early as possible. I nod and say we do need to find our opening and deal with him soon, or every human in the whole dark world ends up on his menu and gets swallowed in the end. But first I say we have to see whether Black Island can move freely across the dark world once this vortex event closes. Only if I can move freely will I ever get the chance to hunt down the God King's Black Island and fight him. And anything short of that is just talk. Baekhyun nods and says we can only wait for the event to end and see, and there is not much time left before it does. We just came through a major battle and took heavy losses, he reminds me, so we have to rebuild our strength fast. Otherwise, forget bringing down that fraud, because we will be the ones in serious trouble. Then he claps a hand to his head, saying he almost forgot, and raises his right hand to draw an item from his storage ring and set it on the table. 09 and I look over at a small, exquisite purple box no larger than a grown man's palm, its surface carved with mysterious patterns. It is not just purple, but it also gives off a faint, eerie purple glow. I guess at once that it is the purple dungeon treasure chest the area core dropped. I have never laid eyes on such a box before, but the color and the way Baekhyun produced it point straight to the answer. He nods and says it turned up after the bargain bin wolf died and the instance ended, so he scooped it up, and he tells me to take it first. Seeing me hesitate, he adds that this is my instance after all, and I contributed the most to the whole operation, so the chest is rightfully mine and I should not overthink it. At most, he says, if it opens into anything that suits them, I can pass a few pieces along. Besides this chest, there are heaps of other spoils from this run, more than enough to go around. Beside him, 09 nods her agreement, so I stop refusing and say fine, and that if anything inside fits them I will certainly set it aside. Baekhyun smiles and nods, saying the key spoils were all teleported to the outside, so we can divide everything once I have gathered them up. He says there is nothing more to do for now, and he is feeling drowsy so he will head back and rest a while longer. I nod and tell him to leave things here to me. My aunts have mostly recovered by now, so hunting down resources will be no trouble, and they should turn up every scrap of the lost spoils quickly enough. After I see Baekhyun off, 09 speaks up as well, saying she needs to get back and repair Galaxy, except Galaxy is still sitting on my Black Island, and she has to retrieve it. I smile and tell her not to worry about that, since Galaxy is enormous and impossible to miss, and my aunts found it long ago, and I offer to take her there myself. She thanks me quietly. After I have seen 09 off with her Galaxy recovered, I return to the office. With the sentry ants on the job, hunting down the corpses is nothing I need to fret over. They will comb the purple dungeon for the wolf monster and dragon-head giant wolf remains, and the belongings the fallen chief left behind. I have other business. I settle onto the sofa, look at the purple treasure chest in front of me, and let a little anticipation creep in. What kind of treasure does a chest from a purple dungeon this brutal hold? Surely it has to be a legendary rank item at the very least. I am genuinely a little excited. This is the highest grade chest I have come across since I first arrived in the dark world. I draw a deep breath, steady myself, and without wasting time I open the purple chest. Light bursts out of it in every direction and I have to squint against the glare. When it thins, I finally look inside and find 5 small, delicate purple orbs resting quietly within. 5 orbs mean 5 items. From the outside, the chest looked no bigger than a palm, so 5 items is already a generous count. Even before I've checked the grade of a single one, the pleasure is plain on my face. 5 items, 5 chances. With that many draws, surely at least one legendary rank item is hiding in there. It is like a lottery, where the more times you spin, the better your odds of winning. I rein in the excitement, scoop up the orbs, and start examining them one by one. The first orb, cupped in my hand, unfolds into an item I know well, an upgrade item for supersonic sailing. My pupils go wide, because there is a marking of 10 trailing behind it, which means it can raise supersonic sailing 10 times over. I had long expected instance chests to yield items that boost the level of supersonic sailing, so by rights this should not have thrown me. But the 10 changes everything. I have cleared a great many instances, and some red instances did not offer skill level items at all, while even orange ones only nudged the odds a little higher. If I truly wanted an item that could push supersonic sailing up 10 levels out of low-grade instances, I would have to clear 10 or 20 of them just to stand a chance. Here it is only one of 5 in a single purple chest. That first result being this rich only stokes me further, and my eyes fix on the item. A purple chest really does not disappoint, I think. And if the other 4 orbs are all this valuable, then I have well and truly struck gold. Once every orb is open, I will sit down with Baekhyun and the others to work out the split. I set the first item aside and take up the second orb, opening it straight away. Another familiar thing greets me, an item for raising the level of the protective barrier. Unlike an ordinary upgrade item though, This one carries the same marking of 10 as the supersonic sailing item, so it can lift the protective barrier 10 times in one go. Having just seen the first, I feel no surprise and casually set it down. Reaching for the third orb, I muse to myself. These two are good items, but grinding more low-grade instances could net them as well, only far more slowly. High-grade items are a different matter, nearly impossible to draw from easy instances and obtainable only through high-difficulty runs like this, or by placing very high in Dark World events. I hope the last 3 orbs hold something serious. I offer up a silent prayer and pick the third orb, and when I open it, I let out a small sigh of relief. It is a gourd-shaped item, one that sits comfortably in a single hand, seemingly carved from emerald jade. I have not read its details yet, but at least it is not another upgrade item I already know. The reading names it the Jade Dew Nectar Gourd, Diamond rank. Pour any liquid into it, and it will replicate that liquid until the gourd is full. The more liquid I pour in, the faster it fills, while the higher the grade of the liquid, the slower it goes, and it can copy liquids all the way up to diamond rank. My eyes light up at that. Good stuff. It may be only diamond rank, still short of the legendary I was hoping for, but the effect is superb, since it can duplicate any liquid below diamond rank. Liquid items are hardly rare, and a good many of them carry excellent, unusual effects. Some liquid resources are not high in grade at all and yet do remarkable specialized work. My own foundational item, the mutated spring water, is the perfect example. When I first landed in the Dark World, I stumbled into a mutual aid contract with the ants, but they were desperately weak in those early days. If not for the mutated spring water letting them mutate and grow so quickly, I might never have held on this far. Even now, the mutated spring water matters enormously to me. It is the core item behind every key breakthrough Wang Hian's biological laboratory has made. The self-destruct ant, the hover ant, and the clear ant among them. A pleasant shock runs through me. This is wonderful, since Wang Han is forever grumbling that there is never enough mutated spring water, and with the Jade Dew Nectar Gourd I will not have to worry about that again. I calm myself a little and set the gourd aside, then look at the 2 remaining orbs with even sharper anticipation. 2 more chances. Even if neither is a legendary rank item, another useful diamond rank piece like the gourd would suit me fine. I pick up one of the orbs without ceremony and open it, and a golden light flashes out. This one gives me pause. It is a noble light, threaded with a sense of age and history, nothing like the glow a mere gold rank item throws off. That strange familiarity tugs at me until I place where I have seen it, which was when I first obtained the legendary rank dragon scale cloak. Excitement grips me. Could this be a legendary rank item as well? I press the feeling down and look. The gold is the treasure's own radiance, sealed away for countless years, and it burns brightest the moment the item appears, so dazzling that its shape is impossible to make out. As the seconds pass, it slowly sheds that light, until at last the full form stands revealed. I see it clearly. It is a basin-sized disc, dense with intricate mechanical parts, unmistakably a work of technology. Taking in the full shape of the thing, I cannot help the odd look that crosses my face. A creation of technology? So mechanical creations can reach legendary rank too. 09 already stands as proof that machines are nothing to underestimate, and yet a legendary rank mechanical item still catches me off guard. A rank as fantastical sounding as legendary never quite seemed to fit with gears and plating. Then again, I remind myself, the technology of the Dark World cannot be judged by common sense, because it is black technology through and through. It sits closer to metaphysics than to any science, so if diamond rank machines exist, a legendary one, or a mythical one further down the road, is hardly strange. I smile and shake off the thought and turn to read the legendary rank disc. It calls itself the Elite Training Instrument, legendary rank. Set it down in an open space and press the button at its center to unfold it, and it generates a virtual training force field. Within that field, any creature can train toward whatever it needs and grow stronger. The listed directions run through strength, endurance, agility, spiritual power, and comprehension. This mechanical disc is a training instrument. The description leaves me a little lost. A virtual training force field, whatever that is meant to be. A force field is invisible and yet real, while a virtual environment is anything but real. So how are the two supposed to fuse into one thing? And it can train overall physical quality, spiritual power, and even the comprehension of strength on top of that. Is that not a bit too all-encompassing to be possible? It is not as though I have never used virtual technology to train, since the shelter's standard virtual combat simulation room can model a creature's information for practice and build up combat experience. But that only ever raised combat experience. Physical qualities like strength and endurance demand a gravity room, and spiritual power demands its own brutal methods, my death-heavy metal chief among them. As for the comprehension of strength, that is a far more ethereal thing, and I have only ever caught the faintest trace of it now and then, with actual training out of the question entirely. This elite training instrument folds every one of those effects into a single device. I do not understand the principle behind it, but since the information says so, then however unreasonable it sounds, the effects will be real, and only their quality remains to be tested. With the scraps of black tech knowledge I have, I am never going to reason it out, so I let the question go. An elite training instrument, a device for forging elite warriors. It is a legendary rank item whose effects far outstrip an ordinary legendary piece, and yet its name carries no grandeur at all, just plain and simple. With this, I can drill my soldiers and strengthen every one of my ants, and Baekhyun and I and the rest can train through it to raise our own strength. The training of strength comprehension especially is far too precious to pass up. Even a slight effect is worth it, as long as it helps push us toward Tier 3 and toward legendary rank. A smile tugs at my mouth as I remember. Inside the instance core, fighting for my life against the dragon-head giant wolf, I weathered the damage of hundreds of self-destruct ants. At the decisive moment, I used damage transfer for the very first time, letting tens of thousands of my ants share that terrible weight with me. In that instant, as I and every one of my ants bore the pain together and were wounded together, my comprehension of strength took another leap in quality. I am only missing the last sliver of it now, one final sheet of thin paper to punch through, and then I can advance straight into Tier 3. Perhaps this elite training instrument is the very opening I need to break into Tier 3. A faint anticipation stirs, but the instrument's real effects still have to be verified, so I am in no rush. Instead, I turn to the last item in the chest. I have already opened the powerful practical Jade Dew Nectar Gourd, and then the astonishing legendary rank elite training instrument, so I am well satisfied and carry no great expectations into the final orb. I pick it up carelessly and open it, and just as I glance at it without much interest, another familiar golden light stabs at my eyes. This one too? Could it possibly be a second legendary rank item? I react on the instant, disbelief melting into delight, and without waiting for the treasure light to fade, I close my hand around it. At once, a tremendous weight bears down on my palm, and it climbs so fast that even my strength can barely hold it, so I set it on the table and look. It is a palm-sized golden item shaped like a small mountain. The reading calls it the Eternal Gold Mine, legendary rank. Placed in an open space, it generates an eternal gold mine that produces legendary rank eternal metal, a metal of extreme density with a peculiar trait of changing its own weight. A legendary rank resource item, and a metal one at that. In pure value, it outstrips ordinary legendary rank gear, because metal resources are the most valuable of all the attribute resources to me. 09 happens to need high-grade resources more than anything, and this eternal gold mine could not have come at a better time for her. The one thing capping her strength right now is the quality of her metal. It might even carry her toward legendary rank, and the machines she designs and builds so often flow back to me and the others, so whatever serves her serves us in turn. My ants may well end up wielding the new black tech weapons she dreams up. I take in the 5 items spread across the table with deep satisfaction. This harvest is truly abundant. 2 legendary rank items alone, plus the corpse of a legendary rank creature, and beyond that more diamond rank monster corpses than I can count. Once the resources are divided with 09 and Baekhyun, I can throw myself fully into raising my strength, and not only claw back everything I lost, but push a decisive step past it. Only half a day has passed since the chief in black robe was swallowed by the instance, and I finished clearing the purple dungeon. It is still the 21st day since the Great Vortex event began, the same day the suction climbed to level 4. Nearly 9 days remain before the event closes, and in 7 of them the suction will surge to a terrifying level 5. None of it, though, has anything to do with me. After devouring that huge purple dungeon, my Black Island crossed the 100-unit mark long ago, and by a wide margin, standing at a full 140 units now. Swallowing that purple Black Island alone handed me 60 units of ground in one stroke, and my island already dwarfs the size of a typical First Chief's holding in any given region. Those 60 units are not merely open space either, they hold countless resources within them, another vast fortune. My ants, with their wildly varied attributes and their enormous appetites, are exactly what lets me digest that fortune and turn it into real combat power fast. I stand on the Wizard Tower's observation deck and look out over the territory below, a ruin still, yet loud with activity and thick with the bustle of my ants and my subjects. Then I go back to my room and reach out to Wang Hyun. I ask whether he received all the materials I had the ants send over, and he confirms that he did, calling me his lord. When I ask about the quality, he tells me this batch runs very high, the legendary rank dragon-head giant wolf above all, and that it should let his research reach new breakthroughs. He adds a caution, though, that the finer the materials, the more tangled the property analysis becomes, so he may need some time. I tell him there is no rush. Then I ask whether all these diamond-ranked monster corpses will let him extract enough growth fluid to lift the hover ant and the tunneling ants to diamond rank. So far, only Leisure Cloud and Rock Spirit among my queens have yet to reach it, held back until now by a lack of materials. And after the purple dungeon, that shortage is gone. Wang Hian answers quickly that he has already set people to extracting more than enough growth fluid, and that I need only send over the ants due for their upgrades and evolutions. Good. I put down the communication ant and reach through the mutual aid contract to Rock Spirit and Leisure Cloud. I tell them to make their own way to the biological laboratory and find Wang Hian for their advancement. Then I take up the manual again and send a line to Baekhyun and 09, saying the harvest has been tallied and we should set a time to divide it together. Neither of them answers. The recent battle came within a hair of shattering 09's galaxy and drained half of Baekhyun's private treasury, so the two of them are surely still buried in the aftermath. I shake my head and let my gaze drift to the two avatars sitting beside theirs in the manual's friends list, and a thread of confusion crosses my face. Will has not answered since I last reached out, and I wonder what he has run into. As for Chungha, before I took on the Purple Dungeon, she told me she was locked in the final decisive battle of her own region, the enemy troublesome and slow to put down. Now was a fine chance to send her tree spirits home and help settle that fight at the same time. In the battle just past, the tree spirits Chungha lent me were an enormous help, while Baekhyun and I ran our decapitation squad against the dragon-head giant wolf inside the instance core. The fighting was brutal, but the battle outside was every bit as savage and under even greater strain. That was especially true once I detonated hundreds of diamond-grade self-destruct ants and triggered damage transfer in the same moment. My tens of thousands of ants all took that horrific damage at once, dropped grievously wounded, and lost their fighting strength for a short stretch. That was true not only inside the instance core but for the main force battling outside it. There were still more than 10 minutes left before the dragon-head giant wolf was fully dead, and the instance battle truly over. Inside the instance core, those minutes were relatively safe, since the wolf pack was already handled and the beast itself lay dying and unable to move. We only had to wait them out with no fresh danger. Outside was another story. The main force out there was already buckling under pressure, and once damage transfer fired, every ant along the entire defensive line dropped wounded and useless. That left only my human vassals, and the tree spirits Chungha had reinforced to hold the line. My vassals bring mediocre combat power and lean on their numbers, so their role stays limited, and in a diamond rank battle they cannot carry the main weight. At the critical moment, the Tree Spirit King, Little Tree, led every tree spirit in activating a group skill of astonishing defensive power. That alone carried the line through the last and hardest stretch of minutes. It kept my grievously wounded ants and vassals from being cut down all at once. Xiongha never appeared on that field in person, and still the tree spirit troops she sent played a role I cannot overstate. Without them, those minutes might have seen the wolves outside slaughter every ant and vassal I had. Even if I had still seized the final victory, the cost would have been unbearable. But the skill the tree spirits unleashed cost them dearly in turn, and while they are not wounded or senseless now, they have been left badly weakened. Even returned to Chungha, they could not put out much strength. Fortunately, my ants recover at a decent clip, and by now a good many of the diamond rank ones have their fighting strength back. Perfect. Once I have helped Chungha settle her battle, Baekhyun and 09 should be mostly mended as well, and then we can sit down over the division together. So I waste no time. I load my recovered diamond rank ants into the spirit nurturing jar, gather up the tree spirit troops, and trigger a teleport toward Chungha's territory. After she went into seclusion and dropped out of contact that last time, I reminded her to switch on teleport permissions, so this jump meets no snag at all. Soon I and the tree spirit troops arrive at her location through the teleport array. When my senses settle, I have appeared somewhere familiar, on a thick branch of the world tree, Little Green, the very branch where Chungha's shelter sits. But unlike the quiet that usually greets me here, a ceaseless clamor of shouts and battle cries now rolls in from beside the world tree. I have been at this too long not to read a battlefield by ear. I have not even looked around yet, and the sound alone already tells me where things stand. The fighting around Cheonghai is this fierce, this dangerous. Beside me, the tree spirit king, Little Tree, wears an anxious face and says he can feel that his master's aura has gone very faint. My expression shifts hard, and I set about finding Chungha at once. Before I left for the Purple Dungeon, when I last spoke with her, she said only that she could not get away and that the enemy was troublesome but not much of a threat. I was close to my own battle and pressed for time, so I took her at her word. She had dispatched a whole unit of tree spirits after all, and no one sends a force that strong if the situation is truly dire. From what I am hearing now, that was not the case at all. The world tree, Little Green, is vast, its branches and leaves dense, and standing on the trunk with the foliage all around me, I cannot see the surroundings to any effect. But if the shouts of battle carry even up to here, then things have already turned very bad. It pushes me to guess at the enemy's strength. Cheongha is renowned for her defense, and breaking through that defense is no easy feat, so whoever is doing it cannot be taken lightly. With my own combat power still damaged, I have to move with care. I do not go blundering about after Cheonha blindly. Instead, I loosed the sentry ants from the spirit-nurturing jar and set them exploring outward with the world tree at the center, sweeping for her while they read the state of the front line. The sentry ants set off at once and comb the whole of the world tree in short order, and when they turn up no sign of Cheongha, they push out farther. I sit cross-legged on a branch, carefully taking in what they send back, and my brows knit despite myself. Strange. By rights, the battlefield should have crept close to the world tree, and Cheongha ought to be somewhere nearby, so why have I not laid eyes on her? While I hunt for her, the tree spirits are searching just as frantically, and by now they have been through the entire shelter without finding their master anywhere. Then the tree spirit king, Little Tree, comes to my side, his voice cracking toward tears, and tells me he led his people in a search and still could not find his master. He swears he can clearly feel his master is close at hand and yet cannot reach her, and he begs me to help, to save his master. Looking at the little tree spirit king already crying in his panic, I answer quickly that since the shelter is holding for now, Cheongha will be fine. He said his master is nearby. He insists there is a mutual aid contract binding the two of them, so there can be no mistake in it. Then this is genuinely strange. I stroke my chin, brows drawn tight, and turn it over. The sentry ants swept the world tree first, and with the detection methods a sentry ant has, a space that small should not be able to hide a single person. Unless something surfaces in my mind and I look up at once, up at the world tree, little green, that blots out the sky overhead. No, that is it. Every other time I came, the world tree was alive and brimming with vitality, and yet this time it feels like nothing more than an ordinary tree. If Cheongha were in trouble, the world tree should be showing some reaction of its own. I ask Little Tree whether he can commune with the world tree and learn where Cheongha has gone. The prompt lands, and the tree spirit king reacts on the instant, nodding again and again, and says he will go speak with the world tree right away. He beats the wings at his back and rises along the main trunk until his figure vanishes near the canopy. I stay where I am, gaze fixed on the last place I saw him, and wait in silence for about 2 minutes. Only then does Little Tree come flying anxiously back down. He reaches me and blurts out that he has found his master, but his face is still bloodless, without a trace of joy, nothing like someone who has just located the person he feared lost. I stand and ask what exactly the situation is. Little Tree answers in a rush that it is very bad right now, that he went up to the core of the world tree and found his master there. I nod slowly. So the sentry ants missed Cheongha because the world tree must have some power that blocks perception and detection. I ask how Cheongha is now, and why she did not come down with the tree spirit king. The tree spirit king tells me, frantic, that his master is in a terrible state. She has sunk her spirit and consciousness entirely into the core of the world tree, and no matter how Little Tree calls to her, she will not respond. Luckily, his master seems to have foreseen that I would come, and left a message ahead of time. A message? Little Tree confirms it. His master's message said this enemy is deeply cunning and deliberately played weak to lull her guard down. When his master led the army of awakened plants and was on the verge of striking the area core where the enemy hid, the enemy struck first. It sent infiltrators in with poison prepared in advance to gravely wound the world tree. The world tree's condition crashed in an instant, and to save it his master had to pull her troops back, then immerse her consciousness in its core to hold the deterioration in check. Purging the toxin completely will take at least 3 days and 3 nights, and through the whole of it, his master cannot move at all. The enemy seized on the absence of both his master and the world tree to bare their hidden fangs and launch a full counterattack. If his master had not awakened so many plants beforehand, leaving a certain defense still standing, the shelter would likely have fallen already. Even so, the enemy has pushed close to the ground around the world tree itself. Little Tree lays out the whole chain of cause and effect in his hurry, until I understand exactly how this came to be. Knowing that Cheongha, bad as her position is not in mortal danger, the knot between my brows finally loosens. I tell him I have the picture now, and that he should not worry and leave the rest to me. The tree spirit king looks up at me with open gratitude and asks to fight at my side. I smile and shake my head, then lay my broad hand on his head and ruffle his green hair. Just now inside the instance, I tell him, he and his people saved a great many of my ants, and he has no combat strength left, so he should rest well. Next, I say the little ones he rescued can repay the kindness that saved their lives. With that, I turn my attention from the tree spirit king and leap straight down toward the base of the world tree. In my hand, the spirit-nurturing jar flares with light, and over 1,000 diamond rank ants come pouring out. In the short while my sentry ants had been out, they had already mapped the whole situation around the world tree. The enemy's main force was a horde of beast-type monsters. Their bodies oozed pus and reeked, exactly like the rotting things in a biochemical doomsday film. These zombie beasts came in every shape, drawn from a dozen different races, all of them reworked into this festering state. Wherever they surged, venom ran off their bodies onto the ground. It ate into the plants and killed them outright, stripping the life from anything green in an instant. Their whole ability looked purpose-built to counter plants. Even Chungha's last line of animated plants was corroding under the assault, their trunks dissolving until they toppled with a heavy crash. The attack came out of the northwest, and under that relentless push, the animated plants fell one after another. The defensive line collapsed until the enemy had closed to within 2 kilometers of the world tree. I dropped down from the tree, hung in the air a moment, and flew forward. As I went, I sorted through everything the sentry ants were feeding me. No wonder Chungha had warned me this enemy was a headache. It was a corrosive specialty, and it happened to bite straight into her plant abilities. I told Swift Shadow to analyze the enemy's toxins and work out how badly they would hit the colony. She was the only ant queen I had brought this trip, and she stayed at my side, helping me run the swarm. Swift Shadow reported that she had already broken the toxins down. They were most lethal against plants, but their effect on the ants was small. Every one of my ants carried a spread of Elixir's detoxification pills among them, enough to blunt the poison badly. I gave a small nod and let out a breath. Either the toxins had been tuned against plants by pure coincidence, or this enemy could shift the nature of his poison at will. Whichever it was, the news came out in my favor. Before I ever set foot in Chungha's territory, I had made a point of drawing another batch of elixirs off Sun Weipeng. The rare ones had all been burned through in earlier fights, but plenty of the lower grades remained. There were strength tonics and a stack of functional pills, and among them sat a supply of bronze-grade detoxification pills. I had grabbed them on a whim, and now they were about to earn their keep. I told Swift Shadow to take command from here. She was to press the attack from the sky and to land at once, the black scythe hunting ants pinning the enemy's main body while the sentry ants went for the head. She answered that she understood. I laid out the tactics cleanly, and the ants tore toward the front line, some over the ground, others riding down on hover ants. 5 kilometers northwest of the World Tree, the tide of zombie beasts still poured forward. The whole army sprawled across 3 kilometers of wilderness, at least 100,000 strong. At the very rear reared a zombie mammoth 20 meters tall, 2 great tusks curving from its jaw. On its back perched a delicate little pavilion. Inside that pavilion, a green-robed youth with a wicked, sneering face lounged across a broad bed. 2 lightly dressed serving girls waited at his elbow while he sipped wine and picked at grapes, at ease as a spoiled young lord out on a spring outing. But the pale, trembling faces of those 2 girls, the sea of horrors around them, and the stench thick in the air poured a shadow over the whole picture. He plucked one more grape and waved the girls away. Then he sat up to gaze 5 kilometers off at the World Tree, which pierced the sky and blotted out the sun, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. He crowed to himself that holding the World Tree did not mean he was cornered. He was hardly the only one who had inherited a legacy. Once his corrupting soul demonic toxin had sunk in, he sneered. Not even the World Tree would recover easily. Short of legendary rank, it was nothing more than a little sapling. Fine treasures belonged to the worthy, and once this whole territory was his, he already had no shortage of ideas for remaking the tree into something of his own. The thought had him licking his purplish lips, eyes burning. He threw his arms wide toward the tree and ordered his children to charge, to turn this land into a paradise of venom with the poisons he had gifted them. The instant the words left him, the hundreds of thousands of zombie beasts roared like madmen and doubled their already brutal pace. Many were trampled to paste under their own kind, and not one of them cared. They still hurled themselves forward. Against that stampede, the animated plants had no chance, mowed down like wheat, falling, corroding, dying. As the last of them collapsed, the trunk of the World Tree, until then screened behind their branches, stood fully exposed. Once the shelter core where the tree stood was breached, this fight was over. He would be the sole chief of the whole region, the only victor. The core laid open before him like an unlocked vault. He shook with excitement, almost convulsing. The 2 girls at his side huddled down in terror, afraid that if he got too worked up, he might refine them into zombies as well. It was not an idle fear. They had watched exactly that happen with their own eyes. He kept screaming for them to charge, to take the Black Island core at the fastest speed possible. The beasts drove themselves past their own limits, leg bones snapping, bodies crushed to pieces beneath their frenzied kin, and he counted the loss as nothing. Then, just as he fully expected the battle to end, hundreds of massive, terrible creatures appeared out of thin air before the World Tree, and he demanded to know what they were. Those creatures were exactly the diamond-ranked black scythe hunting ants I had just released. More of my ants were still hidden on the hover ants overhead. Because a hover ant's body looks like a drifting white cloud and blends into the sky, the green-robed youth never spotted them at that distance. He froze at the sudden arrival of hundreds of monsters, even thousands of meters off. With his strength and his perception, the sheer ferocity of the black scythe-hunting ants told him these things were not simple. He muttered that it was strange that when he had struck this territory earlier, he had seen none of them. He wondered whether they were a trump card, a move held in reserve. He lowered his outstretched arms, brows knitting, no longer the wild, gloating figure of a moment before. Staring at those hundreds of dark 7 to 8 meter beasts with their huge paired scythes planted between him and his prize, he looked thoroughly annoyed. Anyone interrupted like that would lose the mood. Still, though he could tell the black scythe hunting ants had some power, he was not rattled in the least. He told himself that a few hundred troops could never contend with 100,000. It was all the better they had come, because the stronger they were, the more it excited him. He had long wanted to swap the low-grade rabble in his army for something higher, he thought, and had simply lacked the chance. Kill them all, he decided, and he could refine them into zombie beasts of his own, so his strength would only climb. A pleasant little bonus at the tail end of the battle. The smile came back to his face, he waved a hand, and the zombie beasts surged toward my hundreds of black scythe hunting ants. Off to the side I hung in the air, my right eye flaring with golden light, watching the battlefield in silence. Through my eye of delusion breaking, I got a rough read on the enemy's true strength. There were about 100,000 zombie beasts, but by realm the vast majority were only bronze grade and silver rank. Gold and platinum together came to a few thousand at most, and the diamond rank ones were fewer still, dozens rather than a full 100. Having sized them up, I let out a quiet breath of relief. My colony had taken heavy losses raiding the purple dungeon not long ago, but even cut down, what I had left still dwarfed anything this horde could field. On this trip I had brought 750 diamond rank black scythe hunting ants. To them I added 10 diamond rank self-destruct ants freshly raised under Mars, and 100 diamond rank plasma ants that had clawed back most of their power by drinking down stored lightning. On top of that came 10 hover ants, 100 healing ants, 500 sentry ants, and 50 clear ants that were almost entirely intact. My numbers were nothing beside 100,000, but in quality we simply were not playing the same game. I did not let my guard drop all the way though. The enemy had dozens of diamond rank zombie beasts, which, at minimum, meant the enemy chief himself had reached diamond rank. And from the state I had just seen the world tree in Chunghwa in, this man's methods were anything but crude. Anyone who could poison a creature on the order of the world tree had to be holding very high-grade items or abilities. I decided I would take no personal risk, at most fixing a target and striking it from range. I gave up any thought of closing in and drew my dragonbone warbow, ready to add my own shots to the fight. If my troops had been whole and my strength still at its peak, I would not have stepped in at all. But my strength was badly reduced and I had not brought many ants. However fine their quality, the enemy was simply too numerous for there to be no casualties. If my hand could spare even a few of my ants, I was not about to hold back. 2 minutes later, the reeking zombie beast crashed into my frontline black scythe hunting ants. The ants did not hesitate, closing their gaping scythe jaws over the beasts that were all but throwing themselves into the embrace. They clamped down and ground through. Bones shattered and flesh burst apart in a steady rhythm, and in that single collision, hundreds of the fastest charging zombie beasts were wiped out. Those front runners had been almost all platinum rank, with a few diamond rank mixed in. Even the diamond ones, saved only by their bulk what a lone scythe could not close on them, needed 2 or 3 ants working together to bring down. Not one survived a single blow, their bodies parting where the jaws met, their walking dead frames dropping into true corpses. By then the green-robed youth had ridden his mammoth to about 3 kilometers from the world tree, and he saw the whole thing plainly. He was dumbstruck, his face full of disbelief. His zombie beasts, even the diamond rank ones, could not weather a single strike, and he wanted to know what these dark, ugly things even were. His brows drew tight, and it hit him at once that he had stumbled into serious trouble. Then the anger came. He snarled that it was very good indeed, that I had subordinates like this and kept them back. Then he demanded to know whether I had deliberately let the world tree take a hit to lure him in. He spat that fine, I had indeed succeeded, but that anyone who plays with fire ends up burning himself. He was, after all, a battle-hardened chief, the kind who could fight for the top spot in a whole region, and he did not fall apart at the sudden turn. He found his counter fast. He ordered every platinum and diamond rank zombie beast to pull back, to swing wide around the front and hit the world tree from behind. Everything below platinum was to swarm my few hundred black monsters, lock them in place and keep them from splitting off. Strong or not, he told himself, he still won on numbers, and the moment my Black Island Corps fell, the victory was still his. At his command, the whole army's charge slowed, and the formation began to shift, the high-grade beasts sliding quietly toward the far side. They were readying a flanking strike at the world tree. None of it got past me, not with the eye of delusion breaking and my sentry ants scouting for me. I caught the change in the horde at once. Rather than panic, I simply drew my string and loosed the occasional dragon chi arrow to pull an ant out of a tight spot, a smile tugging at my mouth. Quick reaction, I had to admit. It was genuinely the best play against a force with high power but small numbers. Unfortunately for him, ants were not all I had brought, and I had already found him. I slung the dragonbone warbow away and fixed my gaze on a towering mammoth zombie beast in the distance. About 1,000 meters above its head, 10 great white clouds had quietly banked themselves up. On the pavilion atop the zombie mammoth, the green-robed youth watched his beasts begin to flank and let a triumphant grin spread again. So what if the quality was high? He told himself no amount of it could stand in front of 100,000. He would bury me under piled corpses if he had to. By then, he gloated, all these powerful creatures would become his loyal servants. Tension draining out of him, he lay back on the soft couch. As he let his guard slip, he never noticed the white clouds overhead beginning to sink, slowly swallowing the sunlight until the world around him dimmed. He frowned, wondering aloud why it had suddenly gone dark. Half reclined with the pavilion roof over his head, he could not look straight up, so he peered out sideways past the eaves. He found the surrounding sky clear and cloudless. That was when it struck him that something was wrong. The heavens were clear for 1,000 miles, he thought, so why was there a single cloud parked directly above him, thick enough to darken the sky? In peacetime it would mean nothing, but this was war, and he had just run into one troublesome enemy after another, so his mind ran straight to the worst. He came off the couch fast. From noticing the change to rising, his reaction was already quick. It was still too late. The white cloud above him tore open, revealing a pitch-black portal, and out of it came 5 black scythe hunting ants. Each gripped a diamond-rank self-destruct ant in the blunt back teeth of its jaws, heads already cocked to throw. The instant the hover ants' hatches split wide, all 5 swung their heads with everything they had. They hurled the clamped self-destruct ants down at the pavilion below at brutal speed. From only a few hundred meters, backed by the raw strength of the diamond-rank black scythe hunting ants, those 5 self-destruct ants fell like artillery shells and slammed into the pavilion roof. The whole world shook with the roar of one blast rolling into the next. A mushroom cloud 30 meters high climbed into the air, swallowing the entire zombie mammoth and the pavilion until nothing inside could be seen. Within a full 500-meter radius, every zombie beast, bronze or silver, gold or platinum, even diamond rank, was flung miles off. Heads and limbs and shredded bodies spun through the air, and for a moment the scene was pure carnage. Watching from beside me at the World Tree, the Tree Spirit King, So-Su, stared in shock. He had lost his ability to fight, so I had forbidden him from joining in, and he could only stand anxiously at my shoulder, watching and waiting. When the enemy first came rushing in like a flood, he had been frantic. When they split to flank the tree, he had nearly spent his own life force to force his way in and stop them, and I had held him back firmly each time. At the very peak of his worry, he saw that enormous explosion bloom right where the enemy leader had been. By every rule, a tree spirit king who loved nature ought to have loathed a raw destructive force like that blast. Yet in that moment, the terrible thing I had made stirred no disgust in him at all. He felt thrilled instead, almost giddy. He burst out praising me, calling me truly incredible, and asking whether the enemy was surely finished now. Standing beside him with the dragonbone warbow still in hand, I smiled at the towering cloud, because every grand ruin the self-destruct ants left behind pleased me deeply, but I did not quite share his read, so I shook my head. It was not that simple, I told him. An ordinary chief, even one at diamond rank, taking the chain blast of 5 diamond rank self-destruct ants would either die outright or be crippled past fighting. This enemy, though, was not to be written off. He had survived this long, gone toe-to-toe with Cheongha for the top of the region, and forced her into the corner she was in now. A man like that would never be killed in a single instant. My mind went back to the last chief in my own area besides me, the one who had pushed a green dungeon up into a purple dungeon. He too had been fearsome, holding out for hours inside the green dungeon, and driving straight to the core boss of the instance to deal it damage it never recovered from. Without him, my losses clearing the purple dungeon would have run far higher. The Tree Spirit King asked what we should do, and offered to send his tribesmen in. They had rested a while in the nest the World Tree had built for them, he said, and recovered enough strength to fight. I smiled and waved the idea off, telling him to settle down, that I had already made my arrangements, and he should just watch quietly. The words had barely left me when the hatches of all 10 hover ants above the distant clouds swung open at once. Countless ants of every kind spilled out and dropped. The clear ants, healing ants, and plasma ants, all flyers, held themselves aloft. The black scythe hunting ants plunged straight down toward the mushroom cloud like paratroopers, their huge bulk punching through the air and hauling them faster under gravity, until they smashed into the cloud and vanished. A run of dull collisions came echoing out of it. As those impacts spread, the zombie beasts from every direction seemed to catch some fresh order. They stopped hammering the World Tree, turned as one, and rushed toward the mushroom cloud. The cloud itself lingered, blocking my line of sight so I could not make out what was happening inside, so I sent a single word to the hover ants and told them to clear it. On command, all 10 drew their abdomens in and sucked air rapidly inward. Then they crushed it down and drove it out through their hatches like bullets of compressed wind, hammering it straight into the cloud below. Hover ants carry the wind element by nature, but their gifts run mostly to utility, and they own few real wind attack skills. Even so, they have simple ways to put the wind to use. They lean on their sheer physical build to draw in air and fire it back out, and the force gives up nothing to a true wind technique. 10 of those air rounds struck down into the cloud, and it tore apart at once under the crushing downdraft. The zombie beasts stampeding back to defend their master were flipped and blown away by the hundreds on that smoke-laden gale. The pocket the explosion had cleared, on the verge of filling again, was scoured back down to nothing. The center, hidden until now behind the smoke, finally showed itself, and it caught me off guard. The gigantic zombie mammoth, apart from some charred hide and a good many patches of rotting blackened flesh, looked barely changed. It had not even lost a limb. A chained blast of 5 diamond rank self-destruct ants would have ground any ordinary diamond rank creature into dust. Yet this thing had kept every leg and taken only surface wounds, which said everything about how monstrous its defenses were. 50 black scythe hunting ants dropped from above had ringed the enormous mammoth, tearing at its flesh with their scythe jaws. For all their savage strength, they made little headway against that tough, absurdly thick hide. They could only rip chunks free where the self-destruct ant's blast had already cracked it open. Between the low yield and the beast's colossal size, taking it apart was no small task. The mammoth was a nuisance, but the situation was still holding. The pavilion it had carried, though, had fared far worse. Whatever the green-robed youth had built up there was no special piece of architecture. Its defense next to nothing. It had been blown to splinters, not a trace of it left, along with the youth who had been inside and both of his serving girls. Seeing that, I frowned. There was little doubt the 2 girls had died in the blast. I felt a pang for the innocence a war like this swallowed, but I would never throw away a decisive opening and eat heavier losses just to save them on a whim. All I could do was offer them a silent apology and lay the blame where it belonged, on the green-robed youth. I did not for a second believe he had died in that explosion. If he had, his war with Chonha would already be over, and his Black Island should have begun dissolving into hers. Yet nothing about the map had shifted. It was strange. I had kept my eyes on the blast radius the whole time and had seen no one leave it. So where had the enemy chief tucked himself away? I stroked my chin, scanned the center of the battlefield carefully, and turned it over. Before long, my gaze settled on the zombie mammoth still ringed by my black scythe hunting ants. There were no signs of digging in the ground and no other creature had slipped out, which left only one answer. He had to be hiding inside the mammoth's body, which meant that once the beast was killed and cut open, I could drag him right out. The thought put a small smile on my face, and I looked at the mammoth like a lamb already marked for the block. By rights, under 50 black scythe hunting ants gnawing at it, its death was only a matter of time. But the pace was far too slow, and with so much zombie rabble crashing in from all sides to muddle things, dragging it out only invited complications. So I decided not to be frugal. I told Swift Shadow to pull the black scythe hunting ants back first, to keep their distance and hold off the surrounding beasts, and to send down the last 5 self-destruct ants. She answered instantly and carried it out to the letter. In moments, all 50 black scythe hunting ants had fallen back several hundred meters to the edge. The hover ants hundreds of meters up drew a deep breath and fired an air cannon down at the mammoth. This one was different from the last, no longer pure wind, because it carried the final 5 diamond rank self-destruct ants inside it. Feeling that wind pressure bearing down, the mammoth seemed to have a mind of its own. Its eyes tracked the self-destruct ants with a flicker of dread. Then it belched several gouts of thick green-purple poison mist from its mouth and nose, trying to kill them in midair. The mammoth's poison was no small thing. Barely grazed by a wisp of it, the self-destruct ants began to fester and rot, swaying, dropping straight down as if the life had gone out of them. Watching them fall, the beast's eyes even took on a glint of clever smugness. It did not get to enjoy it long. Right at the instant those ruined-looking ants were about to hit the earth, they each blew apart in a powerful explosion, one after another swallowing the zombie mammoth once more. In the distance, the tree spirit king, So-Su, was struck dumb, his small mouth hanging open as he stammered at me. He asked whether my ants had not just been killed by the poison, and how they could still explode. I smiled and told him that self-destruct ants are born purely to detonate. Dying is not their main event. The blast is, and no matter how they are killed, their final bow is always one grand explosion. I said it was time to wrap this up. I watched the cloud swallowing the mammoth. Without any prompt from me, the hover ants, following Swift Shadow's command, loosed an air round down together and blew it clear, laying the scene bare. The zombie mammoth had none of its earlier menace left. After the first bombardment and then 50 black scythe hunting ants tearing it wide, its body was riddled with hundreds, even thousands of holes its hide could no longer cover. Now taking 5 self-destruct blasts with nothing to shield it, it could not hold together and was blown to pieces. With the mammoth gone, the green-robed youth hidden in its belly had nowhere left to run. He lay sprawled on the ground, staring blankly up at the sky, his face a mask of pure disbelief. He could not grasp where all these bombs had come from when the man he faced was supposed to be a plant type. That zombie mammoth had been the Green Rogue Youth's chief trump card. In life, its strength had already reached upper diamond rank, and on top of that, it had been a rare species with monstrous natural defenses. An upper diamond rank mammoth's defense already brushed up against the legendary rank creatures, and no ordinary diamond rank being could break through it. Nor was it only a wall. Between its immense strength and that pair of great tusks, its offense was nothing to shrug at either. By rights, a creature of that caliber should never have been badly hurt, let alone killed, by a run-of-the-mill diamond-rank chief. The Green Rogue Youth was the exception. His specialty was poison, and paired with a few ancient inheritances he had picked up along the way, he understood the makeup of countless creatures well enough to tailor his toxins to each one. That let him slide right past the mammoth's terrible defenses and poison it dead. Then, through parasitic poison arts, he raised it back up as a walking dead zombie mammoth under his command. His poison craft ran deep enough to touch not just a beast like the mammoth, but even something of far more ancient blood, like the World Tree. That was proof enough of how dangerous he was. Every ability, though, comes with its weakness alongside its strength. My own ants were monstrously strong and could grow without ceiling, but their upkeep ran several times, more than 10 times over. The cost of an ordinary power path. It was the same for the green-robed youth. His poisons were fearsome, but as biological toxins they needed time, a stretch of it, to brew the right formula against a given target. When Shumha first fought him, she had held a real edge, precisely because he had not yet mixed a poison meant for animated plants. Once he did, and once he ambushed the World Tree with it, the whole board flipped in a breath. That had always been his method. Lie low, cook his poisons, then reverse everything in one clean stroke, and it had worked for him again and again. This time running into me, it broke on him hard. I had marched my main army straight in, so he had no burrow to hide in and no choice but to meet the swarm head-on. Even then, going by everything he had learned before, all he needed was that absurdly tough mammoth to shelter in while he mixed the targeted toxin. That would have put him in an unbeatable spot, but I never gave him the time. 2 self-destruct blasts stunned him and blew his prized mammoth into scrap. The beast soaked up most of the damage, yet the shockwave still slammed through to him. A man who had never leaned on his own body was crippled in an instant and dumped on the ground, a lamb for the slaughter. It was finally over, and I let out a breath, because this one had genuinely been a pain. The enemies I feared most were never the dragon-head giant wolf sort, all raw attack and terrifying vitality. What I dreaded were men who mastered fields outside my own, the spiritual power specialists like the God King, or poison hands like this green rogue youth. Against them I kept my guard at a full 100%. As he fell into the pit, the zombie beasts around him rushed in a frenzy, many snapping their own legs in the effort, and still none of them could reach him. The black scythe-hunting ants standing over him worked like executioners on a scaffold. Every rioter in that mob went down under a scythe, heads rolling for a good while. Even so, I had brought too few ants, and as more and more zombie beasts piled in, it was only a matter of time before a few slipped through. So I stopped drawing it out and got ready to finish him and close the fight. I told Swift Shadow to do it, and she answered at once. I made no move to walk up to the green-robed youth myself. The man was a poison master, and a dying, desperate counterstroke from him would be nothing but trouble. So on Swift Shadow's order, 10 plasma ants hung in the air over the slumped youth, every one of them primed to loose its plasma. Sprawled on the ground, he saw the terrible skill gathering above him and sank into despair. He had meant to wait for me to close in, then quietly seep out a toxin to poison and seize control of me and turn the game around. He had never counted on me being cautious enough to hand him out the smallest opening. He cursed inwardly that I was leaving him nothing, that a top survivor like him stood right here and I had no thought of recruiting him at all. His last hope guttered out. Seeing the plasma ants strike about to fall, he dropped the act of playing dead, scrambled up, and threw himself into a groveling kneel. He begged me to spare him, swearing he had already broken through to Tier 2 and reached Diamond rank. He could brew biological toxins for me and forge powerful zombie beasts, he pleaded, and keeping him alive would pay off far better than killing him. He would surrender, he cried, and sign a mutual aid contract. His plea played out in front of both me and the Tree Spirit King at my side, and the plasma ants paused a hair, waiting on my word. Seeing me stay silent, Sosu spoke up. He said I had saved his master and beaten the enemy, that the man was mine to dispose of, and that if I wished to take his surrender it was hardly out of the question. I should not hesitate on his account. I shook my head at that. I was genuinely interested in his abilities, I admitted, and biological toxins might well help my ants evolve. But this man was truly dangerous. A chief who ranked first in a competitive zone kept almost no vassals around him, which meant the humans he had conquered had very likely met a bad end. A man like that, wielding poisons on top of it, would never let me rest easy even bound as my vassal. So I told Swift Shadow to do it. She answered, and the plasma the 10 ants had been building for so long came down all at once, a torrent of lightning burying the weakened youth whole. He had time for a single scream before he fell completely silent. Even in his prime, a full strike from 10 diamond-rank plasma ants would have left him almost no chance, never mind on his last legs, so there was no risk of him playing possum. The green-robed youth was dead. With that, the battle ended, and his black island slowly began to be devoured by Cheongas. The final victor of the whole region was settled, and Cheongas stood as the sole winner in her area. At that moment, though, she was still unconscious, with no idea she had won by forfeit. Seeing me end the green-robed youth so cleanly and lift the crisis off her territory, the Tree Spirit King, who had been sick with worry for so long, lit up with excitement. His body trembled faintly, his eyes shining as he looked at me. He thanked me over and over, saying that if I had not stepped in, his master's life would have hung in the balance. He himself, he added, would likely have perished alongside her. I only smiled and waved it off. He and Cheongha had both done a great deal for me, I told him, so this was a small thing, one favor for another, and as teammates there was no need to stand on ceremony. He was about to say more when a fresh wave of roaring rose from below. Following the sound, he saw the zombie beasts down there tearing into everything, not only my ants but their own kind. The whole field dissolved into a chaos of flying blood and limbs. I frowned. With the local chief fallen, his brainless zombie beasts had dropped into an indiscriminate killing state, which was its own kind of headache. Still, I had started this, so I would see it through, and with Cheongha not yet awake, I would tidy it up myself. I told Swift Shadow to keep running the battle, to pen the zombie beasts into the middle and let them chew through one another mainly by infighting. Above all, she was not to let them scatter across the land. She answered that she would guarantee the job done, and threw herself back into command. The Tree Spirit King looked at me again with grateful, glistening eyes. It was a world away from our first meeting, when he had grudged me even a share of Tree Spirit due and looked down his nose at me. Before he could get another word of thanks out, I told him that these zombie beasts had lost their master and gone berserk. They would not settle until every last one was dead. But there were so many of them that even after this fight it would take a long while, I said, and I had not brought many troops. He should keep an eye on things here while I went back to the teleportation point for reinforcements, which would double as training for my vassals. He nodded again and told me to leave it to him. I nodded and, smiling, ruffled the Tree Spirit King's green hair. It had an odd texture, smooth to the touch, yet carrying a faint plant-like rhythm under my fingers. He only blushed, not pulling away, lowering his head and letting me do as I pleased. There was nothing behind it on my part, no more than petting a kitten or a pup, just a bit of novelty. I opened the return teleportation array and was about to step through when something occurred to me, and I turned back to him. Then I remembered something. This chief's ability, and the corpse of his zombie mammoth, should both be useful to me, so I would have the ants haul them off shortly. And if Cheongha woke later and turned up any inheritance tied to biological toxins, I asked him to set a copy aside for me. He nodded eagerly, saying it was no trouble at all. These toxic scraps were not just useless to his master, but actively harmful, so I was welcome to take whatever I liked. As for the inheritance, once his master finished healing the world tree and woke, he promised to tell her right away. I smiled and nodded back. Then I had a hover ant gather up the zombie mammoth's corpse along with the green-robed youth's body, and stepped through the array straight back to my shelter. The teleport was instantaneous. The moment I was back, I picked up a communication ant and reached Tak Mungyal first. I told him to muster a vassal unit since there were still some low-risk fights left on Cheongha's side, good for both support and training. He could set whatever contribution point rewards he saw fit. He answered without wasting a word that he would arrange it immediately, and went straight off to gather the troops. Word tore through my territory in no time. The moment it got out that the Lord was recruiting again, my subjects scrambled over one another to sign on. One of them shouted that he was a gold medal support and to count him in, the rest just as eager not to be left behind. The rewards on any mission I set were always generous, so morale ran high. Inside 10 minutes, the first wave of vassal troops, a full 1,000 strong, had assembled, the quick responders who happened to be near the dungeon, with more still racing over. Cheongha's side was urgent enough that the moment a group formed, they moved out to be teleported through in batches. Mungyal was reliable and fast with it. Pleased, I set the teleportation array right at the dungeon mouth and left his people to run the crossing. Then I stopped watching that front and flew off toward Wang Hian's biological laboratory. The scenery streamed past on both sides as I flew, and I turned things over in my head. My subjects were all human, so lifting their strength meant they had to grasp their own advancement. And battle, the intense kind especially, was the finest catalyst there was. After more fighting on Cheongha's side, I expected a good many of them to break through again. Talent is a serious productive force. As my territory swelled, with more and more land, I needed enough people to work it and squeeze out the most productivity, to raise ants and build strength and stockpile resources. So whenever the chance came, I was never stingy about developing my subjects. Lost in thought, I had already reached the laboratory entrance. I pushed the door straight open and found Wang Heon frowning at his workstation, sunk in a daze, clearly chewing on some hard problem. I walked over with a smile and called across the room that I had gone out for a bit, and brought him back a big haul. Then I asked whether he wanted to take a look together. At the sound of my voice, Wang Heon lifted his frowning face, answered that he would, then rose and followed me out of the lab. I asked what the trouble was, since he looked so worried, and glanced sideways at him with a grin. Ever since he had set up the biological laboratory, he had rarely hit a snag, and every time I saw him, he was calm and self-assured. This was the first time I had caught him looking so vexed, and it made me curious what had stumped him. He shook his head gently, pushed his glasses up, and said it was nothing much. It was the dragon-head giant wolf corpse I had sent the ants to deliver a while back. As a legendary rank creature that still held a certain vitality, its genetic makeup was fiendishly complex, he explained. The gene activity and expression ran wildly different from one part to the next, and some membrane-like layer kept blocking his probes, so it might take him more time yet. So it was the dragon-head giant wolf. Understanding settled over my face and I smiled. The wolf was a complete legendary rank creature, I told him, and a fairly strong one among them at that, so running into difficulty was only natural. I told him to take his time, since I had not even climbed to tier 3 yet, so there was no rush. Besides, I had just brought back some biological materials a tier or so lower, and he could use them to warm up and practice, maybe shaking a little inspiration loose. With that, I led Wang Heon down into the underground city's warehouse district. The hover ants had set the zombie mammoth's remains in a corner of it. Because the corpse carried both a savage rot and biological toxins, that stretch of the warehouse had been specially and temporarily sealed off to keep it from fouling everything around it. I brought him to the door and hauled it open, and a strange foul stench rolled straight over us. The mammoth had always had a faint tang of decay, but these torn scraps of flesh seemed to have fermented all over again. The smell was truly past what a human could bear, and even with my constitution it left me a little dizzy, my nose wrinkling hard. Wang Heon, though, stood there perfectly composed, as if he had no sense of smell, wholly untouched. If anything, he looked eager, striding into the room a pace ahead of me. Watching him charge in like that, I shook my head, refused to be shown up, clapped a hand over my nose, and followed. Ahead lay a square pool, 100 square meters across, and 3 meters deep, where the mammoth's remains had been dumped. The moment I saw them, my eyes locked on. The fragments in the pool were writhing, ceaselessly, as though they were still alive. I could not help exclaiming, asking what was going on and why the corpse pieces were moving. I distinctly remembered that when I killed the thing, they had done nothing of the sort. Wang Heon's eyes, meanwhile, were sparkling as he stared at the squirming flesh. He all but begged me to make sure he got these materials, insisting his research would surely leap forward with them in hand. I smiled and told him I had been meaning to give them to him anyway, since I had no use for rotting meat. Oh, and the reason it was twitching like something living, I added, almost certainly traced back to the enemy chief's ability. I had already killed the man, and I had talked it over with Chiang-ha. Once she woke and searched the territory for the matching inheritance, she would pass it to me, and then I would hand it down to him to study. I told him I had a feeling the biological toxins might help his work. His eyes only brightened further, and he thanked me again and again. He was about to say more when the stench of the mammoth remains finally overpowered me. I waved him off, telling him to just keep researching me new species of ants. I would leave the place to him and be off, I said, since I had things to do. Then I bolted out the door like a man escaping. Wang Heon was left standing there, watching me flee with a baffled look. He sniffed and frowned, muttering that this cold of his had dragged on for days without improving, and his breathing was still stuffed up. He ought to head to the territory's contribution warehouse for some healing pills, he thought, before it slowed his research. Outside the warehouse, I dragged in several deep lungfuls of clean air, and finally felt human again. I could not get over it, that Wang Heon could stand to smell that vile, and I decided these researchers were genuinely built wrong. I sniffed at my own clothes and found the reek clean to them, refusing to lift. Shaking my head with a rueful smile, I figured I would have to shower to get it off entirely. Still, it was worth more practice. I ought to take a page from Wang Heon and toughen my tolerance for foul smells, or else a similar stench on a battlefield might drag down how I fought. For all that his strength fell far short of mine, in this one thing he was worth learning from, and I found myself feeling a flicker of real admiration for him. What I did not know was that the whole reason he could endure it was a nose plugged solid by a cold. Back in my room, I took a long, thorough shower. Half an hour later, I had scrubbed my tough hide raw and red before the rot finally let go of me. I handed my clothes off to my attendants to wash and changed into a fresh, identical black combat suit. The legendary rank dragon scale cloak I could not replace, since there was only the one. But to my surprise, it carried not a trace of the stench and hung there clean as new. I slung it back on and sighed with a smile that this was exactly what a legendary rank piece should be, hiding an attribute even for this. If I could ever gather a full set of legendary rank gear, I mused, I would never have to fret about my clothes tearing or fouling again. It was a lovely thought, but legendary rank equipment was brutally rare, and this cloak was the only piece I had ever laid eyes on. To complete a full set, armor, combat boots, gauntlets, and a helmet, never mind rings or necklaces, I would need at least 4 pieces. I was still turning it over when my manual began to chime. I opened it to a message from 09, telling me she had mostly recovered and was awake. A flicker of gladness went through me, and I wrote back at once that she was finally up. She should hurry over to split the spoils, I said, because there was one prize she would absolutely be interested in. 09 did not hesitate. She agreed and teleported to my territory, and in truth, she was badly short on resources just now. In the last battle, her galaxy mecha had taken immense damage, half crippled if not quite scrap. The materials that went into the galaxy were all fiercely precious, the kind she could gather herself but only over a long stretch of time. In the Dark World, time was the most valuable thing there was, everyone racing the clock, and she could not afford the delay. Soon 09 appeared in my wizard tower by way of the teleportation array, and I turned to look at her. She had traded her ruined combat bodysuit not for her usual work clothes, but for something casual, a white trench coat. Her long white hair was gathered into a high ponytail that spilled loose down her back. With blue jeans, a black turtleneck, and cheeks still a little pale from injuries not fully healed, she gave off a soft, understated, scholarly sort of charm. It was wildly unlike her ordinary image, and it left me staring blankly for a beat. Under my gaze she went flustered, her 2 fair little hands twisting at the hem of her coat, her pale cheeks coloring faintly. She looked thoroughly regretful. She could not explain it herself, but ever since the dragon-head giant wolf's strike had wounded her so badly, the precise, cold, machine-like core of her had seemed to soften a shade. She had gone and put on an outfit she would normally never have spared a glance. Catching the odd way I was looking at her, she felt both awkward and sorry she had. I came back to myself, saw the flush on her face and smiled an apology. It was rude of me, I told her, but the outfit really did look good. When she was not fighting, I added, she should not keep herself wound so tight, since comfortable clothes ought to help her relax. She answered softly that she would, and left it there. I did not push the topic, just walked over to the table in the middle of the room. These were the items the Purple Dungeon's treasure chest had dropped after we killed the dragon-head giant wolf, I told her. Of them, one in particular was what I counted as this trip's greatest gain. As I said it, I lifted a basin-sized disc off the table, an advanced, tech-looking thing bristling with intricate mechanical parts. The instant her eyes landed on something so mechanical, the flushed, flustered 09 transformed. Her expression went dead serious, a fanatic gleam in her eyes, and she rushed straight to my side to stare at the disc, asking what it was. Seeing her light up like that over a machine, I could only smile. 09 was still 09, through and through. I was just about to explain when the manual chimed again, and I stopped to check it. The message was from Baekhyun. As it happened, I said Baekhyun had nearly recovered too, so it would be just as well to wait for him and introduce the thing to them together. 09 nodded, still examining the disc in a fever of interest. Soon enough, Baekhyun materialized in the room and immediately struck a fresh grand entrance pose, announcing that he was back and crowing that whatever did not kill him only made him stronger. Then he turned to greet me, caught sight of 09 in her changed clothes, and blurted out a shocked curse, demanding to know who on earth she was. It took a long stretch of theatrical astonishment before Baekhyun pulled himself together. 09's old image had simply been too iconic, too deeply burned in, for so sudden a change not to floor him. Once he had recovered, he dropped onto the sofa, eyeing the several items on the table with curiosity and excitement. He started nagging me to hurry up and tell them what treasures we had brought back this time. His ability revolved around treasure, and he had no defenses whatsoever against top-tier loot. Seeing them both seated, I smiled and went on, telling them not to rush. Since 09 had only just arrived, it was a good moment to walk them through it together. I pointed to the disc in 09's hands. This, I said, was a tech item called the Elite Training Instrument. Set it down on open ground and press the button at its center to unfold it, and it would raise a virtual training force field, inside which you could train however your strength needed. Baekhyun frowned and could not stop himself from cutting in. A virtual training force field. Training to lift your strength, he said. That sounded an awful lot like a cultivation room and a gravity room rolled together. We already had a cultivation room and a gravity room, he pointed out. Though we had to train in them separately, the functions were at least there. So was this item not a bit redundant? I shook my head and smiled. It was not that simple. The Elite Training Instrument was far more powerful than any gravity room or cultivation room. Cultivating inside it could raise your strength across the board, with training aimed at strength, endurance, agility, spirit, and comprehension all at once. Spirit? Comprehension? Baekhyun seized on the keywords at once. I nodded and smiled, telling him that was exactly right. Although I had no idea of the principle behind it, the elite training instrument could genuinely train spiritual power and the comprehension of power both. Oh, and the most important part, I added, was that this item had reached legendary rank. Legendary rank, Baekhyun exclaimed, plainly not having imagined that something that looked like technology could climb that high. But he was quick to catch fire over it. Legendary rank meant there was no problem at all, he said, since he had only been worried the effect might be thin given how many functions it juggled. At legendary rank, the effect was bound to be superb. The thing was mechanical, he went on, so we should hand it to 09, which would make it easy for her to study. I nodded in agreement since that had been my plan all along. Even if 09's current strength might not be enough to take a legendary rank item apart directly, more study of it should still do her strength good. She had been drinking the disc in with fascination ever since she walked in, but hearing us decide to leave it with her, she shook her head. Better to keep it with me, she said, because the item's main purpose was training. Legendary rank was a touch beyond her current strength anyway, so even if she did want to research it, it would not take up much of her time. Baekhyun nodded and told me to keep it with me then, and they would come by whenever they needed it. Given how close we all were, I did not refuse again. I agreed and said I would find a good spot to set up the virtual training force field and open teleportation access there, so they could come and use it any time. Then I told them to move on and look at the rest of the items. Next I laid out the remaining pieces, and the three of us went over each in turn. Before long we had settled the ownership of every treasure and resource the instance had given up. The haul came down mainly to the 5 items pulled from the purple treasure chests, along with the monster corpses we had killed inside. Because I raise ants, my demand for monster corpses runs high, so the diamond rank corpses and the dragon head giant wolf corpse all went to me. The diamond rank item, a jade dew nectar treasure gourd, went to Baekhyun. Its function could react with the pieces in his king's treasury and sharply boost his strength. He made a point of saying that anyone who ever needed the gourd's effect could always come to him. The second item was the mechanical disc we had just been studying, and we agreed to house it in my territory. It was placed with me alone, but its use stayed open to everyone and it remained available to 09 for research. The third was another legendary rank item out of a purple chest, an eternal gold mine. This was a high-grade metal ore of extreme density that could shift its own weight, and it naturally went to 09, who badly needed quality ore. Just as with the disc though, even assigned to her, she had to lend her help and fill any custom item orders from me or Baekhyun whenever we asked. Legendary rank items like these were simply too precious, the greatest gains of the whole run. They were won by several of us laying our lives on the line, so of course none could belong entirely to one person. Once we had sorted those, there were still items left for upgrading supersonic sailing and upgrading the protective barrier. After 09 stated plainly that she had no need of either, they went to Baekhyun and me, the supersonic sailing item to me, and the protective barrier item to him. With that, everything from the trip was distributed. What lay ahead was a relatively free stretch, room for the few of us to digest what we had won, and bank strength for the next move. Baekhyun told me he was still a bit weak, so he would head back first, and taking his allotted items, he cheerfully took his leave. 09, though, stayed put and did not move. She told me she would come along to watch me set up the virtual training force field, because she wanted to see it. I told her that was fine. She was so taken with the mechanical disc that if I did not let her watch it deploy, she probably would not be able to sleep once she got home. Smiling, I nodded and led her up to the 3rd floor of the wizard tower. The whole 3rd floor was still very large, and I had only partitioned off a small reception room, leaving most of it barely used. I carried the disc to the middle of the hall and set it on the floor. A legendary rank item was not something I could feel easy leaving just anywhere, I told her with a smile. The wizard tower was the core of my shelter, so as long as the shelter stood, nothing could touch it, and here was as good a place as any. She nodded lightly and agreed that here suited it well. Seeing she had no objection, I bent down and pressed the button on the disc, then quickly stepped back to her side, and together we watched in silence. We did not have to wait long before the disc began to pulse with a faint blue light. Its gears turned and its parts rapidly changed shape and position, until in moments, the basin-sized disc had broken into a dense scatter of tiny components. They spread out in a square across the surrounding floor. I took a glance and judged the parts were laid out over about 120 square meters. As they finished spreading, they drilled downward and seated themselves firmly into the ground. Then thin blue beams shot up from each one, crisscrossing until they framed that whole stretch into a box of light. I watched, curious but not really understanding, while beside me 09 was electric with excitement, her whole face rapt. She was almost lost for words as she named it, telling me this was a combination machine. Her look baffled me a little, and I asked what a combination machine was, and whether it was anything impressive. She reined her excitement in a notch and explained patiently. Of course it was, she said. A A combination machine was not simply several parts bolted together. Each part folded in multiple technologies at once, all of them influencing and cooperating with one another to produce strange and remarkable effects. And it was a fiercely difficult manufacturing process. Manufacturing process, I echoed, only getting more confused the more she said. She nodded and gave her small fist a slight clench. She confirmed as much. The moment she mastered this process, she could take all the mechanical modules she already owned and freely combine and match them into items with all sorts of miraculous functions. Legendary rank was too high to bother discussing for now, she allowed. But at the very least she could turn out platinum rank tech items without much trouble, and stood a fair chance at diamond rank ones too. Handcrafting diamond rank items? My expression shifted, and I looked at her in surprise. Did that mean that once she had this process down, she could manufacture high-quality items herself? That was right, she said, though it would not be easy. The process itself was hard to master, and it turned up inside a legendary rank item, so it would take a great deal of time. But once she had it, she would be able to make high-grade items and use the breakthrough to push into her third stage besides. Her answer only fired me up more. If 09 pulled this off, it would be far more than gaining another main combatant. More to the point, she would be like someone who had mastered alchemy, fully able to turn stone into gold. Her pace of pulling in resources would outstrip a printing press by a wide margin. It was fine, I told her, calming myself and refusing to hurry her. We could take our time, and we had plenty of it. Even so, I knew that with her obsession over technology, faced with something this advanced, no words of mine would keep her from throwing herself into it and forgetting to eat or sleep. Sure enough, 09 gave a small shake of her head and told me she was going back to pack her things. She might be staying here with me for a while, she said, and asked whether she would be in my way. I told her she would not be in my way at all, and asked whether she was sure she wanted to. Before I could finish, she said that was good and that she would be back soon. Then she dove eagerly into the teleportation array and was gone to fetch her belongings. That left me standing there alone, stunned for a moment. Then I smiled and shook my head and turned toward the box of blue light the disc had unfolded. I might as well try out this so-called virtual training force field, I decided, and see whether it was as magical as its description claimed. I stepped into the blue force field with my head full of questions. It was just a plain patch of ground and some blue beams, nothing like the gravity room or the cultivation room with their control platforms. I had no idea how the thing was actually meant to be used. Reaching the edge of the beams, I hesitated a beat, and then walked straight in. The blue light washed over me, and at once a strange sensation ran through my body. It felt as if I had turned into a feather, then into a slab of stone, endlessly sliding between light and heavy, solid and vapor. An awkwardness I could not put into words. Beyond that, there were no further prompts at all. I let my body adjust to the feeling for a moment, and a faint guess took shape in my mind. The virtual training force field could train all four of the body's core attributes, spiritual power among them. It might even help along the comprehension of power on top of that. Since it offered no prompts, did that mean that so long as I deliberately trained any specific skill inside this space, it would take effect? 100 rounds of thinking is worth less than one attempt. After a brief consideration, I dropped into the correct stance and began to move, first twisting my body through a series of positions, stretching muscle after muscle. What I was running through was still a set of body-tempering movements Will had taught me not long after we first met. I wondered how Will was doing now. His silence on messages had to mean he had run into something. For him to hit trouble this dangerous and still not reach out was genuinely out of character. Could it be like Xiongha's situation, I thought? Shut away in seclusion for a breakthrough? Working through the forms Will had shown me, I frowned over him. Out of contact for so long now, before I gathered myself and settled back into the training. This set of movements was very basic, but basic often meant that drilling it laid a more solid foundation. Even now, a diamond rank and near a breakthrough into tier 3 and a bid for legendary rank, I had never set it aside. It was my first pick here too, and I began at once. When I first started, I did not feel anything especially strong. I only found that under the virtual training force field, it was surprisingly hard to perform the movements correctly. I had to nail down every muscle and every ounce of force in my body while it kept sliding between the real and the illusory. This set of forms I had run thousands upon thousands of times, until it was woven into my bones and blood as pure instinct. Yet it felt as foreign under my hands now as it would to a raw recruit on his first day. My body wrenched itself out of line, my movements went crooked, and it took a long stretch of adjusting before I barely scraped through a single round. Once I had finished that one set, I found my strength largely spent, and though I was not gasping, I was noticeably worn. That left me both startled and delighted. The effect was actually this good. 10 times, no, at least dozens of times stronger than training in the gravity room. Given the physical fitness I carried now, to leave my body fatigued without harming its foundation was no small thing. In an ordinary setting, even a full day of unbroken training would have done next to nothing. unable to outrun my own recovery rate. My body was like a perpetual motion machine, the smallest fatigue instantly patched over by the self-healing of its cells and tissues. Only by grinding hard in the gravity room could I barely push the drain past the repair. Even so, every session there, however brutal, took several hours to buy even a sliver of improvement, and the efficiency was miserable. But just now, one set of forms in the virtual training force field, the whole thing under 10 minutes, had matched what 4 or 5 hours in the gravity room used to earn me. Progress that obvious, a gap that stark, and there was no way it would not thrill me. I had found again in this training the joy I had not felt in a long time. The joy of my body growing stronger with every passing moment. I clenched my fists and let the excitement out. This was wonderful, I thought. With this, my strength would climb fast again, and the time it cost me would fall away. Time was life, and to lift my strength this efficiently and so much less of it was a gift. This item truly earned its legendary rank, its effects so far past ordinary it belonged in legend. After riding that high for a while, I settled back down. Although I had only been drilling body-tempering forms, the sheer concentration those precise movements demanded had left me feeling my spiritual power tick up a little too. Faint as the sensation was, I could not help wondering whether training spiritual power on purpose would work here. With that in mind, I pulled out my metal guitar again and tried to run the spiritual power cultivation method. Death heavy metal. As the strings shuddered, a run of grating, tearing, death-soaked noise poured out through the whole space. Ordinarily, after so much training, I had long grown used to that noise, so at ease with it, I could even sleep through it. This time I barely brushed the strings a few times, yet the noise I was so accustomed to seemed to drive straight through my eardrums, bore into my skull and land on my cerebral cortex itself, leaving the realm of mere sound behind. In an instant, my head felt ready to split apart. This was no longer a matter of whether the sound was ugly. It had crossed into real physiological and physical distress, and my spiritual power had genuinely taken heavy damage. I stopped moving at once, felt out the injury, and a wave of excitement swept through me. Was the effect really this heaven-defying? Far from being rattled by the damage, I was overjoyed by it. The whole principle of death-heavy metal for training spiritual power was exactly this: to first wound it with noise and then slowly mend it. It was a method that let spiritual power climb, no different from muscle, first torn, then rebuilt tougher and stronger. With how long I had trained, I had by now grown almost completely numb to the noise the metal guitar threw off, and the gains to my spiritual power had shrunk to almost nothing. I had been hunting for a new substitute without any luck, racking my brain over how to keep cultivating and lifting my spiritual power at all. Who could have guessed that the virtual training force field would hit spiritual power training just as obviously, just as powerfully, just as absurdly as it hit physical cultivation? I clenched my fists at once in excitement, my eyes blazing, and set the metal guitar aside. Physical fitness, spiritual power, exactly as the introduction had promised. Both could be trained, and the effects were plain to see. Then what about strength comprehension, I wondered? Would it be just the same?